Right.
No, I don't move that. I'll turn them on for a second and then you'll see. And I'm gonna move, I'm eating, and when I'm eating, I'm gonna turn my camera off. I'll just
Thank
show you
you.
what you'll see.
Good. We don't
Oh,
want to see you eating,
absolutely.
Berlin.
Yeah, what am I? I'm eating sushi.
So we have a somewhat full
See?
agenda. We have, I think, 4 presentations, and we have a quorum of the committee at the moment. And Tanya, I would point out that Omar will not be joining us, but Omar has a sick newborn, and if I'm not mistaken, and Mr. Berlin can correct me, that would qualify as an excused absence for caring for a family member.
I believe his son is a member of his family. I've actually met Enzo twice.
Yes,
He
so
looks like a baby.
he's
Yeah.
absent but excused.
Enzo is, but not.
Okay, got it.
True.
Got it.
So I'm going to begin the meeting. It is 7:05 p.m. My name is Wayne Benjamin, and I chair land use for Manhattan Community Board 12. Before we get into tonight's agenda, I would like the land use committee members to introduce themselves. So I will call upon them as I see them on my screen. So I'm going to begin with Vivian.
Hi, I'm Vivian Ducat. I am now, I think I've been a public member of land use for more than a decade. And before that, I was a full member. I know Wayne and I are watching each other age. No, Wayne never ages. Okay, that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Vivian. Jim?
I'm Jim Berlin. I've actually been on the community board longer than Vivian has been a public member. And I think, we are fortunate to be on this committee because the material we cover is so interesting.
Thank you, Jim. Tanya?
Hi, I'm Tanya. I am assistant chair. I'm sorry, I don't know what I am.
That's one vodka tonic too many, Tanya, okay?
Yeah, I'm actually one bus stop away from home. Yes, and I'll welcome everybody. This is going to be an interesting meeting, some interesting topics, very important updates, and I'm looking forward to it personally. Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you, Tanya.
Yeah, bye.
And our newest land use committee member, Joel Abreu. Joel, you have the floor, or the screen as the case may be. Well, Joel is on mute and he may have stepped away. So Joel Abreu is both a new member of Community Board 12, and as of last month, also a new member of the Land Use Committee. We welcomed him in September and welcome him once again. As I mentioned, we have 4 presentations on the agenda. The first of which is an update. It's indicated from cloth, but rather it's from the development team working on the ELIZA, on the status of the ELIZA, for which there was a groundbreaking earlier this week. So I know that Yvonne Stennett will not be joining us. Who will be leading us through that part of the presentation?
So I think the construction update will come from Mega. I'm representing the development team as an owner, and if there are any, other questions we could that need a response. And Jeremy says he's called in, but I don't see him here.
Called?
Says I'm in you, but I can't. No, that's what his message said.
Wayne?
Yes.
If you could tell everybody to, when they speak, because we have a number of people, to say their, make sure they say their names and who they're representing, where they're from, just so I can make sure I take that accurately in the minutes.
Okay. Well, I mean, Tanya, you said it's So everyone heard that, but Tanya is taking the minutes. So as you go through your presentations, please be sure to give your name and, the organization with which you are associated so we can capture that accurately. Let me see what we can do. I mean, Paola, are you on the line or is Ebenezer on the line as a host?
I am.
And Ellen, what is Jeremy's email address?
Ellen, you're muted.
Okay, give me 1 second. Oh, it's J Kahumbin, so it's JKOHOMBAN at childrensvillage.org.
Did you get that, Paola?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so if you can send him a link to participate as a panelist or resend them a link, that would be great.
Thank you.
While we're waiting for him, I mean, are there, other, members of the team that would like to, basically it's just, an update. We're familiar, with the project. We have discussed it at length. So when Yvonne Stennett contacted me about this, I guess it was just to give an update on, what is now the groundbreaking that has already occurred. So is there anything you'd like to share since we're here?
So my name is Chris Mariadakis. I'm a project executive with Mega Contracting. I'm the general contractor, general contractor that's working on the project. We have commenced. We are well on their way with our SOE. We're about 80% of the way through the rock excavation, and we're moving along with excavation of the project. There were some components that required us to do some work within IS-52, and that work is substantially completed at this point. We've had ongoing meetings with the principals and the staff over at the school. We have an open line of communication with them. That seems to be going well. Basically, I think one of the main items that we wanted to bring up, and we were hoping that we could get the community board support on, is for a project of this nature. We would like community board support to pull after hours variances for Saturday work. Essentially, we are looking to be able to pull a permit to work between the hours of 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. on Saturdays. Typically, DOB will consider a shortened workday beginning at 10, but with community board support, we could get the 8 a.m. start. The reason why we would like this consideration and your support in going for this is that it will essentially, if you work half the Saturdays in the year, the 26 Saturdays in a year, that's a full month gained. So it would allow us to be able to expedite work a little more efficiently and progress the project in the best manner possible. So I think that is one of the main reasons why I wanted to come on and speak to you. And if you guys have any specific questions regarding the construction, the activity, I also wanted to introduce myself. I will be involved with the project through its completion, and you guys can get my my contact information from the invite list, or if you reach out to me directly through Ellen, I could provide that. If there's any further questions that you have, or anytime a question does arise, we're here to work with the community and make sure that we move forward to a successful completion of the project.
And you're looking from 8 a.m. until when on Saturdays?
So the permit would be 8 8 a.m. to essentially 5 p.m., I think is the request in the letter that we're looking for. We have a template letter that we worked with many different community boards. Fortunately, I'm doing 2 projects within your community board. This project as well as another one on 37 Hillside, which is the former home of the Rocky Mount Baptist Church. And we're going to be building them a new home as well as another 164 permanently affordable senior housing, senior apartments over there. It's been a while since we've been up in the community board 12, but this year we're there to do two different affordable housing projects for the community.
And the first thing that came to mind when you mentioned seeking community board support for Saturday work is, what kind of outreach or notification have you provided to, the neighbors?
In the sense of the construction activity going on, or
Yeah, I mean, because as I said, the agenda gets circulated publicly, and the way it was explained to me, this was basically just an update on the project, and it was at one point we were trying to get it scheduled for September, but September's agenda was kind of tight, and then it got at the last minute changed. But it was, I think, sort of a heads up that there was going to be the groundbreaking ceremony this week, and I think the update was intended initially to happen before the groundbreaking, but schedules did not permit. However, if the focus was, in addition to that, to get community board support for Saturday operations from 8 to 5, that also would have been cited in the agenda that was circulated. So there would have been public notice to folks who live in the area that was something that was going to be discussed, so that if they had any comments to share with us, they could either participate it by logging in or emailing the office with their comments. So I'm not saying that the community board or the committee is necessarily against that. I don't know if it's something that we can, realistically consider at tonight's meeting if we don't know what local residents who will be, impacted by it, think about that.
Understood. Unfortunately, I wasn't. I didn't have a direct line of communication with you in scheduling this and getting on the agenda. So I apologize if that did seem and didn't come across the way it should have. Essentially, Mega is an involvement in this meeting, and the reason we wanted to come in was obviously to give you guys an update. Open the forum if you guys had any questions in terms of the progress and the construction, but also to make that request. And if that was not conveyed, I apologize. And maybe we could discuss what the steps are that it would satisfy and would allow for us to get to a point where we can obtain community board support. This is a multi-year project. It's not, we're not going to be finished next month. So obviously the sooner we can get it, the better, but we're here to work with you guys and make sure everyone's satisfied and make sure that, everyone's on board, or as on board as possible, I'll put it that way, and moving forward together. So we could try to obtain that and try to get those Saturday work permits to progress the project.
Yeah, well, one of the things that come to mind, and I see that there are 2 hands up, and I will get to both Jim and Natalie, but one of the things that come to mind is you have, the Community League of Heights, which is a Washington Heights, based CBO that's been around for more than half a century. They in conjunction with the rest of the team can, host, some form of outreach meetings with the community, or in conjunction with, the community board or the borough president office to, discuss that, to, have, open dialogue about what it means. And, based upon where the site is located and who is immediately around it, the impacts may not be that much, but, you've got a team of folks that include members who are, rooted, in the community. And one way to, get that input is to have them, lead the outreach. But I'll go to Jim and then to Natalie. But Jim, you are muted.
I also was invisible, and now
This
I
is
am
true.
invisible. I want to make several comments. One of them is I want to compliment, I believe it's Chris, who exhibited, I think, a very cooperative spirit, and that's something we like to see. And we try to be cooperative too. But as Wayne pointed out, there is this very important issue of notice. And that's why we actually give notice to the community, and then they will be able to come to it. And in terms of I'm also the parliamentarian. In terms of the timing, it'll just be at our next meeting, because then the community will be informed, and then they can come and talk. Now, the other point I want to make is that I live in a large co-op, and you may be aware of a local law that makes us constantly repair the bricks. And this can be very noisy, probably as noisy as your construction, if not noisier if you're in the building. Now, what we do in terms of Saturday work, and it may not be feasible, but it's something I would like you to consider, and it may be something you get to hear a month from now, is that, 8 o'clock in the morning, people work real hard and maybe they have the weekend off. So on about 8 o'clock. And the other thing is, and again, it may not be feasible, but what we insist upon is only quiet work. So we would, if there's demolition, you wouldn't do that on, now pouring concrete, I'm not gonna, that's what isn't, but that's not nearly as noisy, but jackhammers are noisy. You get my point. So if that is something you could offer, or that, I think that might, and again, if you're in the middle of nowhere and you don't have any residential buildings, then, make all the noise you want, I suppose. Well, not really, but if you have residential neighbors, then I would hope you take my words into consideration. Thank you very much.
Understood.
Natalie?
Hi, good evening, Wayne. Good evening, committee. This is Natalie from the Manhattan Borough President's Office. Apologies for not being on camera. My bandwidth isn't cooperating today. But I just had a quick question. The name of the contracting company again?
Mega Contracting Group.
Okay. And are you the person who's going to be attending and reporting at the district service cabinet meetings?
On behalf of Mega, I don't know if that's a development team obligation.
Okay, because for a lot of these long-term projects, we do end up with a construction liaison from the project that comes in. So I was wondering if that was going to be you. We can follow up with other parties involved.
I mean, I could definitely make myself available to do that. I'll just have to confer with, Ellen with the development team, and Jeremy and Yvonne, just to make sure that I'm the right person that they want there.
Okay, and then the only other thing is that, I know that Wayne asked about the local residents and their buy-in for whatever the variance that you're asking for, but of course, with the case of the Eliza location, we're concerned about the school and what their opinion is. And so if they have an opinion about Saturday work helping to accelerate the overall timeline of the project, so it doesn't interfere as much with the student life, or if they don't have an opinion on it, that would be something that we'd be interested in knowing as well.
Yeah, I think the school is actually the closest neighbor.
I mean, it is essentially, we share two exposures, two property lines with school property, one of which being the actual school building. I could speak with the principals, and I could get, prior to next month's meeting, a letter of support, because I know that they would very much like us to work on Saturdays. And the exact opposite ask would be make all loud, noisy activity on a Saturday as opposed to during the work week. So,
but I think Jim's point was on a Saturday, but not starting at 8 o'clock.
Understood. I'll try to limit all noisy activities to between 10 and 12 on Saturdays only.
Joel, actually, I see Tanya, then Joel.
Sure, yes. So I guess my question for you about the Saturday work is just, have you all been, I'm assuming you've been in touch with DEP because, you know, if there are construction, you know, related work complaints, they usually go to them. What is your, I guess, plan to sort of work with them if in case there are complaints or
So
concerns from the community?
noise and dust mitigation, noise and dust complaints do go through DEP. If there is a specifically noise complaints that would get relayed to DEP, as well as you know, potential water issues and things of that nature, DEP gets involved with. We have noise and dust mitigation plans on site. We have quite a robust safety department, and we make sure we maintain all of our logs, and all of our plans and procedures are maintained on site. Typically, it's just an issue of getting the building department to issue the permits, and that requires, because it is an after hours variance, like I said earlier, typically DOB will issue a 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. work permit. Now that work permit typically would not allow for, or I should say, does not allow for employers or subcontractors to get a full day's worth of work in, which becomes counterproductive and then just becomes a much more arduous task, as well as not being able to get a full day's worth of production in. So a lot of times those Saturday permits go unused because you're unable to get the proper manpower on the job site in order to make it a productive day. So allowing for an 8 a.m. start. Now, there are different, like you said, types of work activity. Later on, when the building's fully enclosed, you know, there's going to be carpentry work, interior work that really isn't as, I guess you would say, noise heavy, but the benefit in every phase of the construction, there is a benefit to getting this Saturday work permit, this variance, and it would allow for us to expedite each phase. And like I said earlier, we do have the school as neighbors, and essentially they're partners on the project as well, with the STEM lab and some other shared space and whatnot that we have with them. So I know that they would also prefer the exact opposite, like I was saying earlier, where we concentrate some of the other work. And given that it is Broadway, we do on the backside do have across the street have some residences, but Broadway is a very commercial street.
I saw Joel's hand up, but now it's gone.
Hi guys. Good evening. Sorry, my video is not working. I just had a quick question in regards to what was the school again? The school that it will be affecting?
IS 52 on Academy and Broadway. It's actually three schools. There's three different principals that operate within that school, within that building. They share the space.
Okay, thank you. That's it. Thanks.
I would also like to welcome to the meeting Steve Simon, who is also a land use committee member. Are there any other questions or comments from the committee? If not, I would say that we welcome the team to come back, as Jim said, to the November Land Use Committee meeting. We will make sure that the agenda states that we're going to be considering the request for the Saturday work hours. And in the interim, I guess between now and then, if the team or, Cloth and other members of the team want to do some outreach to the school and other neighbors, to let them, know that this conversation is taking place. Because what often, happens is sometimes folks don't know it's going to happen until they see the agenda, which might be at the last minute. So the extent to which there's already been communication, that helps things to be a little more organized. But other than that, we're, look forward to speaking with you again in November, and just make sure that we have everyone's email address, so we'll get you the links a little more smoothly this time.
Understood. And if I may, I would like to reach out. Who would be the best person for me to reach out to get, given that it is going to be for the next month's meeting, the other project, 37 Hillside, as well on the agenda, so I could discuss both projects at the same time and invite everybody.
Well, yeah, I mean, the district manager is Ebenezer Smith, but you can contact Ebenezer Smith, or you can contact Paola Garcia, or Chanel, but Ebenezer or Paola would be great contacts. And if you want to present on 37 Hillside as well, we are on notice, so we'll just make sure that that is also an agenda item for November. We have a fair amount of history, shall we say, with 37 Hillside, because there were a couple of proposals for that site, one of which was dramatically out of scale. And the current one we support, but it's taken a long time to get underway, and we're happy that it is underway.
Yes, and I could also speak to that. That is a difficult site, and the logistics of that site. That, as well as everything leading up to where we are today, but we are finally at a point where we're getting ready to hit the ground running and really start progressing that project as well. So we're excited. We're excited to be working in the area and to be doing these wonderful projects.
Sounds great.
I appreciate you guys taking the time. I appreciate everyone's time, and I look forward to speaking with everybody again next month.
Right. Is there anyone else from the team that would care to say anything before we go to the next agenda item?
Thank you for the opportunity. Yvonne and I will circle back and come up with a plan prior to November.
And could you identify yourself for the minutes?
Apologies. Dr. Jeremy Kohumban, Kohomban. I'm the president and CEO at the Children's Village.
Thank you. Thank you. So once again, I thank the ELIZA team. Moving to our next agenda item is a consideration of a proposal by the team for the American Academy of Arts and Letters to create both accessibility within these wonderful landmark buildings, as well as to link them. And I know committee members who've been on land use for a while know that we've had discussions with the American Academy, as well as the Hispanic Society, over the last decade or so, about the design of that facility, because there are all of these changes, both within the buildings, there are elevation changes, and even the terrace, you go down to go up. So it's a real accessibility challenge. And the proposal we have here is to address many of those accessibility challenges, so that there will be an accessible entrance to the academy, and that the buildings on the north and south sides of the terrace will be linked. And also, just internally, there'll be improved circulation and accessibility. So with that, I turn the agenda over to the team for the American Academy, and who will be leading us through that to begin with.
Wayne, this is Cody Upton with the American Academy of Arts and Letters. I'll start off, and then I will hand things over to David Bay, our architect. So my name is Cody Upton. I'm the executive director of the Academy. And before David presents a proposal in greater detail, I thought it would be helpful to give some very brief background on the Academy and the origins of this project more generally. So first, just briefly about myself, I've worked at the Academy for 15 years, and I've been the executive director since 2017. And 5 years ago, I moved to Washington Heights, and I live north of the Academy at 187th Street and Cabrini Boulevard. And then I'm joined tonight by Jay Rahali, our Senior Director of Facilities and Construction, and then of course by David, our architect. Very briefly, for those who don't know what the Academy does, we're an honorary membership society that was founded in 1898 to foster and sustain an interest in architecture, fine art, literature, and music. And each year we elect new members and give over $1 million in awards to non-member artists in those 4 disciplines. We also fund new works of musical theater, purchase and donate artworks to museums across the country, and present exhibitions, concerts, and talks that are free and open to the public. So the Academy occupies the 3 westernmost buildings on Audubon Terrace. The 2 westernmost buildings were built for the Academy and completed in 1923 and 1930. And the 3rd building, which we purchased in 2005, was originally the headquarters of the American Numismatic Society, which has since moved away. And since 2005, we've made 2 alterations to the terrace, which the community board weighed in on. The first was a glass link to connect our south building to what was the Numismatic Society on the terrace level. And the second was the addition of wheelchair ramps on the exterior entrances to our north and south galleries in 2014. And essentially, even with these projects, the Academy still has significant accessibility challenges that increasingly are making it difficult for us to run our own events and also to lend our spaces to various community organizations or even to rent them out for various events. Which brings us to tonight's presentation. So since 2017, our board of directors, our architect members, so architects who are elected to membership in the Academy, as well as David Bay, our own architect, have really worked to devise a comprehensive master plan to address both deferred maintenance, to improve interior circulation, and then hopefully once and for all to make our buildings truly accessible for both our members and the public. And effectively, we believe that these alterations are necessary to help us fulfill our mission and not only to serve our own membership and award winners, but to serve the wider arts community of Washington Heights and Uptown Manhattan. And we're very eager for your thoughts and feedback. And without further ado, I will turn the presentation over to David Bay so that you can see what it looks like.
Thank you, Cody, and good evening, everyone. My name is David Bay. I'm the architect for the American Academy of Arts and Letters. And as Cody alluded to, I'm here tonight to present our proposal to make the Academy's campus fully accessible. And accessible not only from a handicap perspective, but more broadly to establish connections and provide access to very difficult to reach areas of the Academy's 3 buildings. And I'm presenting tonight because the Academy is also located within the Audubon Terrace Historic District. And we will be presenting this same proposal to the Landmarks Preservation Commission at some future date. And I'm going to attempt to share my screen if that's, I hope everyone can see.
Yes.
Oh, great. So let me start quickly with the 1979 LPC designation map showing the extents of Audubon Terrace and the original institutions that occupied it. And here is a block plan showing the current configuration of Audubon Terrace. The 3 Academy buildings Cody mentioned are shaded in purple. The first is the South Building, built in 1923 and designed by McKim, Mead and White. The 1930 North Building, designed by Cass Gilbert, and the former Numismatic Society buildings built in 2 parts in 1907 and 1929 by the architects Charles Pratt Huntington and Henry Brooks Price, respectively. The remainder of the block is occupied by Baruch College to the northeast. The Hispanic Society occupies 3 buildings, 2 on 155th Street, 1 on 156th Street, and they own an undeveloped lot as well here. And east of the North Building is the Church of Our Lady Esperanza. And west of the Academy are 2 10-story apartment buildings, which are outside of this historic district, 788 Riverside Drive and 710 Riverside Drive.
780.
780, correct, sorry. And shown here are the entire block elevations of 155th Street above and 156th Street below. And there are 2 things I wanted to point out. The first is that nearly every building turns its back to the street. The public entrances to most of these institutional buildings face the interior of the block. On 155th Street, the only exception is the Academy's South building here. And on 156th Street, the two exceptions are the church and these doors to the Academy's auditorium. The second thing I wanted to point out is represented by this dotted red line, which Wayne mentioned, which you see the sidewalk kind of slopes down towards the river as you head west. But the red line, which represents the interior of the terrace, you clearly see that as you travel west, you go further up. It rises as you head west. And the terrace is broken into three distinct levels. There's a lower terrace, a mid-level terrace, and an upper terrace. Here is a historic photograph from 1929, which nicely shows the interior of the block. You see how it was conceived as a shared public space and how the front doors of the various institutions face the terrace. Tax map photos taken around 1940, the north building on the left, and the south and east buildings on the right. And here are the same views today, and you'll see that very little has changed since 1940. Here's a recent view of Audubon Terrace from Broadway. Gates were added to control access to the lower terrace, and you see in the distance a second set of gates to the mid-level terrace. And moving further into the block, standing at the mid-level terrace, in the distance one sees the steps to the upper terrace. You can also see the front doors to the east building, doors to the south building, and just kind of poking above the rear elevation of the church, you see the roof line of the north building here. And finally, standing on the upper terrace with the south building to the left and the nearly identical facade of the north building to the right, and of course, the ever-present backdrop of the apartment buildings to the west. And here you see the full elevations of the south building on the right and the north building on the left. And at this point, we are roughly 30 feet above sidewalk level. And one thing I'd like to point out is that the north building, the exterior door seen in this photo, is the only means of access to the north building at this level. There is currently no connection to the lower levels or to the rest of the academy or to the street. And this lack of connectivity is one of the circulation deficiencies we are attempting to address. Zooming in on the academy's portion of the terrace, I'd just like to point out in plan the two more recent addition Cody mentioned, the 2008 glass link and the handicap ramp to the north and the south building. These interventions were successful in providing handicap access to this level, but to this level only. The remaining floors of the three academy buildings are currently not handicap accessible.
And David, if you could just for a second, one of the things that you emphasized when we were talking about this before is in the north building, if you're on the lower level in the auditorium, there's no way from inside the building to go upstairs. You have to go outside and come around the terrace in order to enter the doors you just showed us. There's
yes, thank you for clarifying that. And I think it'll be clear in a future slide, but it's true. The way to imagine is if you had a large building and on the roof, you built a house. And the only way to get to the front door of the house was to get to the roof, but there was no way to get to the house from the building that it's sitting on. That is the condition that this north building.
Excuse me for a moment, but I can remember going from the auditorium up to the terrace some years ago. It was a circuitous way to get through the building.
Yes.
Exactly.
Correct. One way to do it. So what happens at public events is if there's an event in the auditorium and there is a kind of a reception or an outdoor event on the terrace, you would exit the auditorium, walk to Broadway, go through those two series of gates and the 3 levels of terraces to get to this point, and then back into this building. The other way, which I believe you mentioned, is from the auditorium behind the stage, there's a small kind of half circular stairs, which brings you up to the balcony level. And then from there, you enter the south building, which is this building here. And then from the south building, one would have to go up 2 flights of stairs to go back out these sets of doors to the exterior and then back into the north building.
I don't remember anymore. It's got to be at least 30 years ago. But I do remember going through the balcony.
Right, it goes to the balcony of the auditorium behind the stage, but there's no way from there to get to this portion of this building. You still need to go to the south building, up to this floor, back out, and then back in. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, that's fine. And hopefully all this will become clearer as I go through the materials. You see here a basic diagram of our proposal. Currently, the south building has a small elevator, but only the south building. So we are proposing to add an elevator to the north building and to the east building. The east building elevator bulkhead, along with some proposed mechanical equipment, will not be visible from any public way. So we anticipate these additions will be approved by landmarks at staff level. The north building elevator, along with a new staircase we're proposing, will provide access to the levels below and also provide access directly from 156th Street. And finally, we're proposing to add a 1-story connection between the north and the south buildings. And to help explain the current configuration of the Academy, I will very quickly run through a series of aerial views, which I hope will explain the complex interior configuration of the building and also the necessity for a proposal. And here's the view from 155th Street, the north building, south building, and east building. And if we were to cut these buildings at street level, this cut corresponds to the first level of the south building, which is mostly administrative, and also the second level of the north building, which happens to be the balcony level, and the mechanical or cellar level of the east building. And currently, when one arrives at the front door of the south building, one is required to walk up a couple of steps to the vestibule and then several more steps up to the first floor. If one were to arrive in a wheelchair, he or she would be brought down to the loading bay and taken down a ramp down to the cellar and then to the small elevator, which you see the shaft here. Also shown on this drawing through this photograph is a series of ancillary spaces which currently function as a mailroom, file storage, and a small kitchenette. So our proposal is to clear out these service spaces as well as the east building cellar spaces and to create a new handicap accessible door right on 155th Street. And fortuitously, this new entrance is located precisely where the sidewalk elevation aligns with the first floor. And this new entrance creates a nexus point from which direct access is provided to the new elevator and staircase in the east building, the new elevator in the north building, as well as the existing elevator in the south building. And so with this new door, the Academy provides handicap access to all floors of each of its 3 buildings. Moving up and cutting through the buildings at terrace level, one sees at this level the north building, which is one large room, the north gallery. And again, the only access to the north gallery is through these doors. Similarly, the south building is one large room, the south gallery, whereas the east building is a series of smaller galleries. And as you can see, the terrace level is the main public and ceremonial floor for the Academy. And here is our proposal, which adds the elevator and vestibule at the north building's eastern side yard, a staircase and connector along the western side yard. The current handicap ramps would be removed, and through the connector, everyone, handicap and able-bodied alike, would use the same path to and from the terrace. And highlighting the new circulation paths created from the new north building elevator, one accesses both the terrace and the north building, and through the north gallery, one can go down the new staircase or travel along the connector, which connects to the terrace and then to the south building. Once in the south building, one utilizes the existing glass link to access the new east building elevator, as well as the south building elevator. And returning to the overall view once again, without any section cuts, and with the proposed additions highlighted, one sees the one-story connector between the north and south buildings, the elevator bulkhead and vestibule, and the east building elevator bulkhead and mechanical equipment. You see as well the new door on 155th Street here. Which then brings us to the specifics of our design proposal. And I'll start with 156th Street. Here is an elevation of the north building. Behind this facade are just two spaces: the auditorium, which takes up the space between street level and terrace, and the north gallery, which occupies the space above the terrace. And our project entails adding air conditioning to the auditorium, which requires the addition of fresh air intake grills, which you see here. These grills would be bronze in a Roman lattice pattern to match the typical grill design found throughout the interior of the north building, as shown in this photograph. And at the terrace level, the elevator and stair bulkheads. These bulkheads are clad in vertical bronze panels in a reverse batten pattern, which is to say that instead of protruding standing seams, there would be a reveal between each panel. The uncoated bronze finish would be allowed to weather naturally. And here's a photo from 156th Street looking west, and a photo montage showing the proposed grills at street level, as well as the elevator and stair bulkheads at the terrace level. We are integrating the grills into the existing stone panels located on either side of the entrance doors. And the bronze bulkheads are made of the same material as the current bronze doors found throughout the Academy. And here you can see the relationship of the proposed bronze bulkhead with the existing bronze doors below. A close-up and detail of the proposed grills set within a limestone frame, and a close-up and detail of the proposed elevator bulkhead. Moving to 155th Street, one sees a very symmetrical elevation of McKim, and White's design for the south building. And like the north building, it's very easy to understand the spaces behind the facade. Administrative offices on the first floor, member meeting rooms on the second floor, and at the terrace level, the third floor, one large gallery space. The main building volume with its central main entrance doors, and to the west, the doors to the loading dock, and to the east, the location for our proposed new handicap doors, which you see here, which compositionally, I believe, provides a nice counterbalance with the loading bay door. And as this drawing makes clear, we are not trying to create a new main entrance to the Academy. which I think would be impossible to its location and size. And rather, our goal is to create a new handicap entrance that is in balance with the entire facade. A close-up of the location of the new proposed door. And here is the new door. We are proposing a double door composed of vertical bronze panels with a reveal between each panel, similar to the rooftop bronze. But unlike the rooftop bronze, the bronze here will be thick sand cast bronze, as shown in the inset photo. For those of you who don't know, sand cast bronze has a varied surface texture and a beautiful tactile quality. And as a natural material, it will change color based on the environmental conditions, as well as the number of fingers touching it. And as mentioned before, it is the same material found on all the doors of the Academy. Our feeling is that the simplicity of the design, along with the beauty of the material, will create an inviting new secondary entrance to the Academy. And very quickly,
Just a quick
yeah.
question or comment. I mean, on a couple of occasions, you said you're creating a new, handicap accessible entrance. Is this intended to be just a handicap accessible entrance, or is this intended to be a new public entrance that gives you accessibility to all three buildings more easily?
There was a lot of discussion about that within the Academy, and let me just quickly go back to this. I think the feeling is that the current front doors to the South Building will remain the main public entrance when there are public events. Currently, the buildings are mostly occupied by staff, and I think this door will function for those purposes. Moving forward, and correct me if I'm wrong, Cody, once
No, I think that's right. I think for day-to-day business, we would use the new doors because it will just make it so much easier to welcome people, to receive deliveries, all that sort of stuff. But when we have more ceremonial activities, we would probably use both doors. They would both be open, but the main older ceremonial doors would probably be the way that most people would enter. I guess it depends too, Wayne, on what the event is. Like if it were in the hall, the auditorium, I think you would use the new entrance. But if it were more in our South Building, the older doors make more sense.
And very quickly, here's a plan showing the interior vestibule where a series of interior doors provide access to the south, the north, and the east buildings. And a section showing the deep bronze jamb, as well as a new proposed skylight, which will provide natural light into the vestibule. An additional detail sheet, which I'll skip for now, but we'll happily come back to. And here's a street level view where the new door is being proposed. And here with the new door. So with our initial conversation, Wayne, we got some feedback questioning how welcoming these new doors will be. So here's an even closer view of the proposed doors, which clearly shows the vertical bronze panels, which are 3 3/8 inches wide, as well as the 3/4 inch bronze reveal in between them. The lettering is cast in the same bronze, but is slightly polished to have them visually pop, as is the elongated tail of the ampersand, which will function as the handle. And as you know, I believe these doors will be quite beautiful. But based on the feedback, we explored the possibility of introducing some transparency to see if it improves the design. And so we're sharing with the committee this study where the previous solid reveals become glass. The vertical bronze panels stay the same, but the fasteners to the glass door frame are accentuated. I believe there are merits to both approaches, which I hope we can discuss. But for now, I'll move on to the terrace level, and we can return to these images later. So moving to the terrace level, here's the existing plan shown in greater detail. And one thing I think it's important to share is some historical precedent discovered as part of our research. On the right, you see a plan and elevation by McKim, and White, showing their original 1921 design for the Academy, which incorporated a large connecting wing between the south and the north buildings. At that time, only the south building was built. But 8 years later, when Cass Gilbert was designing the north building, he too proposed at that same location a large connecting wing between the south and the north buildings. So at least conceptually, the desire to connect north and south buildings at the terrace level is one shared by the Academy's two original architects. And interestingly, both designs propose a connecting wing which is taller than either north or south buildings. And I have to admit that I find the Cass Gilbert proposal the more compelling of the two, primarily because it pronounces a strong central bay, as opposed to the McKim, Mead, and White proposal, which expresses a more serial rhythm. And here is our much more modest proposal, which reduces the connector to an 8-foot wide hallway, which connects the south gallery to the north gallery, and through a central landing opens onto the terrace. The connector is purposefully set back from the side facades of the south and north building and only touch the buildings where the new openings require it. In front of the connector is a granite planter, which continues the granite base course of the adjacent buildings. And cantilevered off of the granite planter are Ipe benches. Here is a view looking west and cut through the eastern side yard where the glass link is installed. The inset photo taken from within the glass link focuses on the opening to the south building, shown here and here. The opening is framed by a simple steel jamb painted white, and our design follows this example, and our new openings are detailed in an identical manner. I also want to highlight this portion of the terrace here, which was made inaccessible when the glass link was installed. We are proposing to rectify that and add a door to access this terrace. And moving to the northern end of the terrace, you see the elevator bulkhead and the vestibule and the new opening to the north gallery. And between the north and south buildings, you see the elevation of the proposed connector. Our design reasserts the central base symmetry found in both north and south buildings through a pair of solid bronze bifold doors, and to either side are full height walls of clear channel glass. In front of the channel glass are granite planters, which match the material and height of the existing granite base course of the north and south buildings. The horizontal roof band is aligned with the pediment courses of both north and south buildings. This same view with one leaf of the central bifold doors open, and here fully open, which creates a central entrance and exit point for both north and south buildings. The granite base course is carried into the interior of the connector, as is the brick floor surface of the terrace. Switching orientation and facing north. And here with our proposal, the door to the elevator vestibule at the right, and at the left, the section of the connector. The connector is set back 27 inches from the face of the north building. Switching orientation again and facing south, one sees the nearly identical facade of the south building, as well as a glass link which connects the east building to the south building. And here with the connector in section, it's really a mirror image of the previous view. The one difference in this direction is that at the end of this corridor is a large picture window overlooking Trinity Church Cemetery. And here's the final orientation on the terrace, looking east. and cut through the western side yards of the south and the north buildings. And the same view with the proposed addition. On the northern end, you see the staircase coming up and the new opening to the north gallery, the wall of channel glass, which provides a filtered view of the side facades, of the south and north buildings, the slope down to the central landing, which is slightly less than 4% and is gentle enough that handrails are not required, sloping back up to the new opening to the south building. This view is the same view, but set further back. You're standing at the rear yards of the two apartment buildings. And their current view is of a blank brick wall and a stucco wall. And our proposal is to infill the portion of the addition up to the height of the existing parapet in matching brick, and above that to continue in bronze panels the 13-foot, 10-inch height of the one-story connector. And one thing I should mention is that we will most likely be seeking a variance from the BSA. Currently, the Academy's north and south buildings are on a single zoning lot and are non-conforming in that they are built fully on the lot. Any addition within the equivalent 60-foot rear yard zone would be an increase to this current non-conformance. And of course, if a variance is required, we will be returning to this committee. Here is a section detail, which more clearly shows the relationship between the bench, the planter, the glass wall, and the connector. There are a number of details that I'm happy to return to if desired, but in the interest of time, I will quickly.
Yeah, I would say we probably don't have the time to go through.
Okay, great. So let me just quickly run through the rest of this and focus more on the kind of the images. Here's a view west from the upper terrace. And the connector with the doors closed, doors half open, doors fully open, a view towards the north, focusing on the side yard between the north building and the church. And here with our proposed elevator vestibule. And finally, returning to 155th Street to focus on the one remaining elevation we did not present at the west side yard, where one sees a blank brick wall, and the proposal where we're proposing a matching limestone facade to replace that brick wall. It will be set back 21.5 feet from the sidewalk, and this new elevation would match exactly its eastern counterpart in location, material, and details. And above this, at the terrace level, set back an additional 6.5 feet is the end elevation of the connector shown in bronze with its large picture detail. And here is a detail of that. And that basically is the end of my presentation. And thank you so much for your time. As you know, there are a number of additional drawings and details which I'm happy to return to.
Sure, thank you, David.
Yep.
And I know Steve's hand, but Steve, your hand has been up all during this. So this is from before that your hand was up?
No, this is with relation to this presentation.
So Steve, then Vivian, then Joel.
Should I stop sharing my screen?
No, you can stay.
Okay, great.
Let me say, to me, this is very, very exciting. This is, I can't believe that, actually, I can't believe the Academy is going to be able to do all this work and can afford to do it. But if this comes to pass, this is to me an incredible advance, especially I was involved with the landmark designation of the terrace back in the late 70s, early 80s. And for me, what this really also represents is the fact that the Academy is reaffirming its commitment to stay on Audubon Terrace, as opposed to some of the institutions that started out there and have since left. So I want to commend you, and Cody, I look forward to one day meeting you. This is
That would be great.
this is a very significant improvement, and I'm thrilled that you're gonna be able to do this. But let me just say that one reason I was walking through the North Building some years ago is that I was talking to one of your predecessors, whose name I now forget. But what I was trying to do back then was to convince the Academy to make that beautiful auditorium available for various community events, for school graduations and similar things, concerts. And the problem back then, I was told, was that you could not make it available to the public because there was no secondary means of egress. So but by building this connector or doing the work that you're doing here, is it possible to create a secondary means of egress onto 156th Street?
Well, so Steve, we have a public assembly permit. So I think that it's possible that, I mean, as far as I understand from a fire code standpoint, egress in and out of the auditorium right now is legal, but it's true that that second means of egress right now is through our garage entrance on 155th Street, which is which would require people in a fire to kind of go through a warren of back rooms in order to get to that exit. But with that said, I think what this proposal does is it provides a third means of exit, which would be directly onto the terrace itself. But I think, just going back to your point, we do lend the hall now to some community groups. Opus 118 uses it for an annual recital, and we have lent it to some school graduations. I think the bigger issue for us now is accessibility. When someone, when a school has a graduation in our auditorium, they expect that their, family members who might not be able-bodied would be able to come and attend. And right now it's a huge pain because we have to, bring people basically through the back entrance on 155th Street. So I think that with these accessibility changes, as well as some of the interior upgrades that we're doing to the auditorium, like actually installing a lighting system, which we've never had before, and air conditioning, will make the hall much more desirable for these kinds of activities.
Well, that again would be a fantastic advance, and I would look forward to that. And so the connector that's going to be built on the west side is being built entirely on your property line, does not intrude at all onto the alleyway behind 780 and 788?
That's correct.
Ah, okay. I didn't think you had space there. Okay. All right. I hope when Vivian speaks, she'll point out how she recently found a photograph of Arthur Miller and Marilyn Monroe at one of your past ceremonial events.
Vivian?
Yes, so I'm just starting to, I'd like to start by saying that Cody has been amazingly kind and generous through Riverside Oval Association with images for our calendar, and just in general, I think he's a huge improvement over former management of the organization. That said, my dining room and some of my bedrooms look straight down at my kitchen on the Academy, and I have visited with people in 788 and 780. And the noise when you redid the terrace was god awful. I mean, the sound of breaking brick. And the one thing I'd say, I know you have to do your work, same thing as the earlier conversation with the Eliza, but there were no notices in buildings. There was no sense of give back. There was no acknowledgement that we have to live with the sound and actually the light that's on all the time, which may be the Hispanic Society and not you. And I think if to whatever you're going to do here, you need to acknowledge that we live around this, and I'm not the only apartment that looks straight down. And just to say that you do need to think of your neighbors in whatever noisy or bright things that you do there. But that said, you're great guys. I'm proud that you're my neighborhood.
Thank you. Yes, I think we could definitely do a better job. I think we posted notices in the lobbies of 780 and 788, but had no direct contact with with management. And in fact, I'm not even, we have a relationship with some of the supers, and don't hear great things about those building owners.
I live
but
in 790 and I'm a co-op owner, and there are lots of us in 790 and we're a co-op who looks straight down on it also.
So maybe you can host a reception prior to construction, so you get to your neighbors directly and forget about the building owners.
How
That would
about
be
sound canceling earphones like you give to people with autism? I'm serious. I work at home and it was, the noise and the people who are closer, it's god awful. And I'm happy that you're making it disability friendly, but I need you to be friendly to your neighbors too.
Well, do you think the Riverside Drive Association would be a good way to get access to all the neighbors? Is that like a forum that we could invite people through or distribute information about the project through?
I would do it. Absolutely.
but-
I would help. I'm co-chair with Mr. Steve Simon, who you just
Ah,
heard, and I would do what you needed to be done to be a good neighbor.
that would be great. That would be wonderful.
And you know how to find me, Cody.
I do.
Vivian, we once had an event in the gallery there. How many years ago was that?
A million.
10
You-
years maybe, no?
And your predecessor gave us, I will say, your predecessor gave us a cocktail party. And then we all wrote thank you notes. And she apparently said, what do they think? They're going to get another one? But if we hadn't written the thank you notes, she would have been horrified by our lack of grace. So it was a can't win situation. That said, I think a cocktail party is nice, but it's more like work with us because we're going to live through it.
Yeah. Understood.
So, Joel,
Sorry, this is very detailed. Thank you guys for describing it that way. It was a great presentation. I've lived here, and I'm ashamed to admit this, but lived here my whole life and never knew this was here. As a new member, I'm like shocked that I never knew that this was here. But rest assured, I'm going to visit it this fall because it looks amazing and it looks very interesting. I just had a quick question in regards to the connector and how far up does it raise? Because it looks like it's covering a few apartment buildings on the Riverside side, the 790 and 798. I think it is.
actually 788 and 780.
Oh, 780, 788. So it covers a few buildings, and I just want to know, have they been contacted, and are they okay with? I mean, you guys got to work anyway, but just a line of communication between you guys and those tenants.
No, not yet.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, because I would imagine that they like the terrace, or rather the view of the terrace, and just a line of communication with those individuals would be appreciated. Thank you guys. That was awesome.
Jim?
I second the previous speaker in two ways. Several of the previous speakers. The presentation was extremely well done, and your plans are truly impressive. But again, if I were a resident of one of the two buildings immediately to your west, on the right floor, right now I see your terrace and it's all very interesting and there's all kinds of light coming into my window. And especially because we'll call it the back wall of the connector is not transparent or translucent, it will be darker in my apartment. And so one question I sort of have, and you may well have an answer since you're architects and I just live around here, is that have you thought of making I suppose it's the west wall of the connector translucent or something, so it would have less of a negative impact? I think the folks will be annoyed enough that they're seeing your connector and not the terrace they used to see. Of course, it's your so that's just the issue I wanted to bring up. Because the view that we have here, and then I'll stop, you know, the view from the terrace is transparent and it's beautiful. But the view from the back is just this, it may be that same lovely bronze, but they may not like it. I think if I were them, I wouldn't like it. Thank you.
Jim, we have talked about it. It feels like it's a complicated question. I think that we would love, you know, your input, and maybe we also need the input of the tenants. But the idea, on one hand, a translucent wall or a transparent wall would allow light in, but it would also produce more light, and also there might be privacy concerns with the tenants. I mean, we're anticipating that if we have this link, there will be, you know, if we have an event at night, there will be lights on, there will be people, there might be activities and events, and that's effectively directly outside people's windows, in some cases their bedroom windows. So it's hard to know what would be preferable. You know, looking onto a blank facade where no one can see into your spaces, or something that's more open and airy but allows that two-way vision.
Well, like you said, you might want to ask these people what they think. I think that'd be a good beginning.
Are there any other questions or comments from the committee? Steve?
Yeah, could I just get some clarification? How tall is the connector? How much height are you adding at that point? So would you be blocking the windows of more than one floor?
Yes. So, you know, we did take a careful look at that, and with the help of Wayne, we actually have the floor plans of 788 and 780 of Riverside Drive. And to the answer to your question is that there's a window kind of at this elevation right here, if you see that, and another window here. So it does impact, in total, the connector will impact 2 apartments in 788 Riverside Drive and 2 apartments at 780 Riverside Drive. And through a study of the floor plans, we kind of looked at the layouts and all the rooms kind of facing east. To make kind of a long story short, I have a summary here which I can share with you that that for those 4 apartments in 788, 5 of the 12 windows of those 2 apartments face east, and at 780, the same 5 of 12 windows face east. And so less than half of the windows in those apartments face this frontage. The height is 19 feet, essentially, from the lowest level of the terrace. And we really did try to make this connector as low as possible. And I think a kind of, let me just quickly go to, I think, a slide so at this point here, which is the lowest ceiling height, the ceiling height here is slightly less than 11 feet for the connector. And that might not seem that low, but one is entering from a gallery here, which has a ceiling height of 28 feet. And here, the ceiling height in the north gallery is nearly 30 feet. And so it's kind of an extreme kind of compression as you enter the connector. And not only that, you know, the vestibules outside of the gallery in these 2 buildings have a ceiling height of over 18 feet. And so we did really make an earnest attempt to kind of make the connector as low as possible.
I would just point out that the point that Joel raised and Jim reiterated is, you know, something Dave and Cody and Jay, we talked about at length when you gave me a tour. And, you know, looking at the floor plans, I would say it's less a function of what percent of the windows face, but what are the rooms? And in each case, you have living room windows that are faced. You have living room and bedroom, but the critical thing is the living room being the sort of the primary public room in those apartment lines are facing there. So it might have been, less of a concern, although still a concern, if you had maybe bedrooms or kitchens or bathrooms. But in each case, I think in the case of 780, it's the living room and the dining room are facing there. And I pointed out that's probably because when the building was laid out, your buildings didn't exist, so they had a much clearer view of the terrace. So I think, and it's pushing 8:30, we have a couple other presentations. And do you plan to go to Landmarks this month?
Not this month. The process for us is that we will file initial plans with DOB. As I mentioned before, it's likely that we will get a zoning objection, which will trigger the process for going to BSA for variance. And after that step, we plan to go to Landmarks. But Landmarks is fully aware of this presentation. They have a copy of it.
Right. So I know that you're looking at some point for a resolution from the community board commenting, I guess supporting the proposal. But if you will also potentially need the BSA, would it make sense for you to make both requests at the same time?
I'm not so familiar with the BSA process, and my understanding that it's a very long and lengthy process. So whereas we're very familiar with the Landmarks process, and so I don't necessarily know if it makes sense to link the BSA and the Landmarks.
Yeah. So I mean, what I'm hearing is, and committee members, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm hearing enthusiastic support for the proposed project, but with some recommendation that there be outreach to the residents of 780 and 788 to, discuss the impact of the link on their view and what are the options for mitigating that. Vivian, I see your hand up.
Yes, I mean, the one thing to say, I was involved in your finding of those floor plans, is that in the 1930s, a lot of those apartments were broken up. So what you may think is only 4 apartments, whatever, is actually likely to be more apartments than that. So you should bear that in mind when you try to consider who's being affected. And that's all I'll say for right now. Or
So
how many people are affected.
Steve?
Yeah, I would just like to say that if we don't really have a pressing time factor, I would like to be able to take advantage of that and let's hold a meeting with the people who will live right there and let them see the plans and let's get the benefit of their input as well.
Well, as I said, I think what the committee is saying, there is enthusiastic support for the project. We think that outreach to the tenants makes sense, and we can put that in your hands to organize. And in fact, if you are going to use the Riverside Oval to help with the communication, you have Vivian and Steve both here who can help facilitate getting the word out, so that you can have that conversation. And when we speak again, you can tell us how you've been able to absorb those comments and respond to them.
David, when is the Landmarks presentation tentatively scheduled by?
Yes, it's the next public hearing is October 28th. And I know that we are not on the calendar for that, but we are hoping to be on the following. And I mean, I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I can.
I think they typically hold it more or less the same, but the same time every month.
Right. So I think there's one earlier in the month and one later in the month. So be sometime in November, either the,
Right, and so land use will meet the first Wednesday in November. So you can come back to us, and basically you have an entire month to, have, some dialogue with your next door neighbors and, to discuss the very things that we're discussing now.
That sounds good. I think we can do that.
Jim, I see your hand up still, or is that a new hand?
No, it's a new hand because I think once again, the points you made were very important. I would not be comfortable voting on this without either, as you pointed out, hearing from the group as to what conversations they had with the neighbors, or even more specifically, I think I would be even more comfortable if the folks from the neighboring building actually were invited to our next meeting and they could participate in the discussion. And so I think that's, and that would simply involve, and the community board could do it too. We could put notices in the lobbies of these buildings and, maybe a little picture of, what might be expected. And sort of, Wayne's is on the same wavelength he was with the previous group, because it's sort of an issue of notice. And if things go as we're requesting, the folks in the building to the west will have notice, and then we will have a much more just process.
But I'm suggesting something a little different.
I know that. I said I'd be willing
I'm
to.
completely on board with
also.
the notice, but I think, just as, the committee meetings allow for greater discussion than a general meeting, a project-specific meeting where, the Academy's team is inviting the neighbors to come in and talk about this project will allow them to have a much more detailed conversation than they could have in the course of the land use meeting.
Well, I think that's also a wonderful idea, and I didn't quite understand that, but no, I think, and like you said, the two together would be even better.
Well, yeah, that's my point. So by the time they
Yeah.
come back in November, they should already have had that more detailed meeting with the neighbors, who are always free to show up as well at the land use
Excellent,
committee meeting.
excellent.
So I want to echo what Steve Simon began with, and I think what I said when I toured. I don't think that there's anyone who, after all the discussions we've had, is against the effort of greatly increasing the accessibility of the building, and not just the accessibility in terms of disability, but just making the buildings more usable in general. I think that's a wonderful idea. And it's just some of the details of, how do you get certain things that are a little touchy done in the right way? But, we're, looking forward to seeing this advance.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for your time. And David, thank you for a wonderful presentation.
okay, no, thank you, everyone.
So our next item is and I think this is the first application for a fresh grocery store since the program was initiated in 2009, is it? So earlier this year, I believe it was in June, the community board passed a resolution supporting what's called Fresh 2, which is an expansion of the program to other areas of, I believe, the Browns, Queens of Brooklyn, and Staten Island wasn't even part of it, and the North Shore of Staten Island. But Community Board 12 was part of the original plan. We just didn't have any applications until now. And so this is, I believe, the first time that there's an application for a fresh grocery store. So this is 4650 Broadway. And who will be leading us through that?
I will. My name is Vivian Krieger. First of all, I just want to say it's always a pleasure to see another Vivian. So nice to meet you. Nice to meet everybody, but a special shout out to Vivian. And I'm from Cozen O'Connor. I'm a land use lawyer representing the property owner at 4650 Broadway. With me today are Frank Fusaro and Jason, whose last name I'm going to butcher, who are both from the architect, as well as Bobby Chen from the ownership team. So
what is the cross street of 4650 Broadway?
it's it's the corner of Broadway and Sherman.
Ah.
So I will, you guys have a full calendar, and we really appreciate you hearing us. So I will present the project, and then the rest of the team and myself will be able to address any questions you may have. We really do appreciate you allowing us to present the project to you tonight. As you mentioned, this is an application for a fresh supermarket certification. I'm very excited to hear that we're going to be the first fresh supermarket in the community board area. I think that's wonderful. The fresh supermarket will be in connection with an as of right mixed use development that will fully comply with the existing zoning. The site is approximately 47,000 square feet, and it's located within an R72 zoning district with a commercial overlay that extends from Sherman Avenue into the site for 100 feet. The R72 zoning district is a medium density zoning district that has been in place since the enactment of the current zoning resolution in 1961. The site is currently occupied by a vacant 2-story building. The proposed project is for a 19-story as of right building with commercial and community facility uses in the base of the building. The upper floors above the base of the building will all be residential. As I mentioned, we're here today to present the fresh supermarket application to you. The building will contain a complying fresh supermarket, which requires a ministerial action by the chair of the City Planning Commission called a certification, where we as the applicant have to demonstrate that we comply with all of the fresh regulations. And then the chair will issue a letter to the Department of Buildings stating that we comply with these requirements.
Could I just clarify? So it's a 19-story building in total?
Yes.
And of the 19 stories, there will be 2 floors of community facility space?
Yes, there will be 2 floors of community facility.
And that is in addition to what I'm assuming is ground floor retail, which is where the fresh supermarket will be?
Yes, absolutely correct.
Okay, so then it'll be 16 floors of residential.
Is it 16?
Well, if it's a 19-story building and 2 floors of community facility and 1 floor of retail, it would leave you 16. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm a lawyer. I'm not good with math. Except for FAR that I can do.
Yes, we like FAR calculations.
Okay, so as you noted, the Fresh program started in 2008, and it's aimed at encouraging the development and retention of full-line grocery stores to offer residents the opportunity to purchase fresh meats, fruits, vegetables, and other perishable goods. And the zoning text offers zoning incentives to encourage fresh supermarkets. So as you also just noted, the fresh supermarket will be on the ground floor along Sherman and will comprise of approximately 15,800 square feet of floor area, which will then allow the developer to reallocate the same amount of residential floor area to the residential portion of the building. The R72 zoning allows for a building that could contain up to almost 307,000 square feet of floor area. The proposed project, inclusive of the fresh supermarket and the reallocated residential floor area, will contain less than that. It will contain approximately 274,000 square feet. So even with the zoning incentive, the developer is still not maxing out what is permitted by the zoning. I've got some other facts and figures in here, but I just wanted to kind of give you that overview and open it up and see if you guys had any questions at this point.
And the document that you are reading from, was that forwarded to the community board office?
These are, what I'm reading from right now are just my notes that I scribbled for myself, but I did send over the draft application, which has been filed with Department of City Planning. I see Annie White, who is the team leader, is here, and she's really been helping us with the application. Typically, we wouldn't come to present the application formally to you until it's been officially filed. However, the developer is applying for 421A, and there's for the affordable housing, and there's going to be 30% affordable housing, and there are vesting deadlines. So we really appreciate you allowing us to present the application to you now. Just want to let you know that we did meet with Annie and some of the other folks over at City Planning earlier today, who were able to give us comments on the draft application that we sent over to you. The overall project is not changing. The overall size of the fresh supermarket is not going to change. The comments some of them had to do with the way different portions of the store were shaded, and making sure that some of the lines were correctly done, so that we're really following all of the technical requirements that need to be on the drawings. Annie, I just want to make sure that I presented that accurately. If you want to correct me, I'm fine with that. But I just want to make sure that you're aware that even though this is not the official filed application yet, the changes will be of a technical nature and will not be a change to the actual application. We're hoping to get the comments that we discussed with City Planning today. We're expecting them relatively soon, and we will turn around those revisions very quickly, so that we can submit the filed application well in advance of the stated full board meeting at the end of the month, and to be able to address any other questions you may have.
So my quick question is, presenting the fresh application to land use makes sense, but given the 421A application, are you presenting to Housing and Human Services?
I can't speak to that. I'm only dealing with the fresh application. Bobby, I don't know if you have that information.
So let me just say that I would advise the team, because I think in the past, HPD or someone looks for some kind of feedback, and so 421A applications have typically gone through the Housing and Human Services Committee. And in some cases, they might invite land use, because in some of the buildings, there are variances, other things going on. But here, if you're building, as of right, then really it's just the fresh application, which is the zoning action, so to speak, that we would be concerned with. But the Housing and Human Services Committee would be interested in the housing component and the affordability of the units and the 420-way, So, that really would be their purview.
That's really helpful. I just wrote it down, and I will confer with the team afterwards and make sure that they're aware. Thank you.
And just, I see a number of hands, but so my understanding is the fresh program, it basically allows the square footage that's allocated to the supermarket, which has to be at least 6,000 square feet. So you're more than double that. So that's fine. It basically is held harmless in the FAR calculation, so that it doesn't eat into, what could be otherwise the residential, which would be the concern here. And I think the height of the ground floor supermarket, you're allowed to, I guess you don't count that, or you can add it to the height of the building up to, I think, 1 story. but it doesn't sound like in this case, you need to do either one of those because your building is smaller than, the maximum FAR. And if it's R72 zoning, that's height factor zoning, so you don't have any height limits. So basically you just need the certification for the supermarket so that the FAR doesn't count towards the total building square footage.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way of putting it. You're exactly right with the floor area. That is the certification, which is the application that we filed, and the addition of an additional story would be a separate application called an authorization, which you're exactly right, because it's a height factor building. We're not applying for that here. So it's just the certification.
Okay, so I see 4 hands. I think it was Steve, then Joel, then Tanya, then Jim.
Maybe this is a question for you, Wayne. Are you saying are you saying that the zoning?
I'm off the hot seat.
Well, not entirely, but are you? Well, it's for the two of you. Are you saying that the zoning bonus that they would gain from the fresh grocery certification does not enable them to have a taller building?
No, I said it would, but they're not using it.
So then, Ms. Krieger, what is the benefit to the developer? Why is the developer applying for the designation?
Well, it even though we're not utilizing all of the floor area for in total that would be allowed for the site, not all of that floor area would be allowed for the residential. So Wayne is correct in saying that the 15,800 or so square feet of the supermarket, we get to reallocate that to the residential floor area. So there is a benefit to the developer, but we're
Right,
still staying within the overall.
Okay, but the 15,800 additional square feet that you're entitled to evidently must enable you to build a taller building than what you had intended. Is that correct?
Well, if according to the FAR calculations, they could build a building that's over 300,000 square feet.
But they weren't planning to.
Well, no, if you use the size of the site and the zoning, if you can go to 300 and whatever thousand square feet, and they're building 274, they're allowed to build a bigger building, but they're building a smaller building, well, relatively smaller. But we've run into projects like this before when BSA applications have come before us, because in the R72 there is a limit to how much of that can be residential if you're doing, let's say, a mixed use, and in some cases you don't have the demand for the community facility, and you cannot as of right just build more residential in what could be community facility. You have to get variance. I guess in this case, what the program is allowing them to do is to allocate the 15,800 towards the residential, which otherwise would have been capped out by zoning. So the overall size of the building is not bigger, but the allocation of uses within that is allowed to get massaged a bit.
Oh, I have to believe.
So when I retire, I'm going to come and work with a land use attorney. Is that okay?
You're hired.
I mean, I have to believe that that somehow it results in a building that's taller than it otherwise would be.
It results in a larger residential component.
Well, and most likely at least another floor of the building, correct?
It's the building envelope allows, we'll say this, but within this, you can only have a certain amount of residential. So we're not actually making this bigger. We're just changing sort of the piece of the pie within it. So so we can actually build a bigger building with or without the fresh supermarket.
Okay, but it's okay. But it is a pretty big building at 19 stories. And do you have an idea what are you going to do with the 2 floors of community facility space? Do you have a tenant for those 2 floors?
They're there's gonna be two spaces. One of them is gonna be for a charter school, for an elementary school. The developer is pretty far along in conversations with a particular charter school, but there's nothing signed yet, so I don't want to reveal who that is just yet because they're still in discussions. But there will be a
Okay.
charter elementary school, and then the remainder of the community facility space will be for medical use.
All right, and in the interest of full disclosure, I have to say I work for the City Parks Department, and right across the street is one of our most treasured parks, a scenic landmark, Fort Tryon Park, and I'm particularly concerned about the impact of this building on that park and possible shadow impacts, and frankly, the fact that you have such a tall building that's going to detract from views of the cloisters and the rest of this beautiful park. Have any studies been done to determine the impact of the building on the park, particularly on the shadows?
This application didn't require any environmental review because it's ministerial, but we do think that it's a huge advantage to the residents and as well as the school children to have this proximity to such a beautiful park.
No, of course, but are you going to also detract from the park? I think that's a question that even though you may not be required to do an EIS or an EAS, it's a question that in good faith should be looked into. Those are my comments.
Joel?
All right, guys. So I have a few questions. I'm trying to wrap my head around this. So this Fresh Supermarket is a program that designates part of this residential building or development to be used as a supermarket. Am I right?
Yes.
And you're applying for this for that. Now, are you going to be, or the developer's going to have a business in there, or is it something that's going to be owned but is going to be privatized? Is it a supermarket external or within the development?
One of the requirements for the Fresh Supermarket is that you have to really retain this space as a Fresh Supermarket. So there is a current supermarket operator who's a small business owner who's got about a half a dozen successful supermarkets within New York City that has signed a letter that we've submitted to the Department of City Planning stating their interest in the space. And the developer is currently negotiating a lease with this operator. But I think more significantly, there's going to be a restrictive declaration that the developer is going to have to sign that gets recorded against the property. So that puts the world on notice, so to speak, that this space has to be used as a Fresh Supermarket. If the space ceases to be used as a Fresh Supermarket, with the exception of brief periods of time where one tenant may leave and another one is coming in, then that would have an impact on the square footage that has been reallocated to the residential portion of the building.
Okay, I understand. Now, this small business owner, just speaking as a longtime resident in that area, I used to work there, right on Dyckman. I know there's a few supermarkets, one particularly on Dyckman. I think it's on Sherman and Dyckman. And is it gonna be one of those? Because I really want the supermarket to reflect the neighborhood, right? I want and I want to know what small business owner is this, and it's like a chain of chain of supermarkets. Is it something local? Is it like a supermarket where there's going to be Latino products there? Do you know about this small business that has put in a lease request?
Yeah, look, I think that, one of the big components of this program is a focus on fresh produce and the fresh meats. And I can't speak for the supermarket owner, but just from my own personal experience, I've seen different fresh supermarkets where it really is in the best interest of the supermarket owner to carry products that are things that are needed and wanted in the neighborhood. I mean, the supermarket is to serve the local community. This is not, a destination supermarket. This isn't, like a big strip mall with a huge supermarket that people are driving in, from far away to get to. This is really meant for the neighborhood. So I would hope so, and I would imagine so.
Because I know that, with the fresh produce and, organic things, there's a price hike, right? I'm just concerned these type of supermarkets tend to have higher prices just due to the quality of things in these supermarkets. My concern would be that this business owner doesn't realize this and has these great products, right, that can't be afforded in this neighborhood, right?
Joel, I would think it's important to differentiate between, fresh fruits and vegetables and organic, which you're right. I mean, sometimes the pricing is crazy, but near me on 160th, the Food Town has a great, fresh fruit and vegetable, and the prices are, it's not like going to Whole Foods, which is whole paycheck. So, I mean, but part of the requirement for the zoning under the fresh program is a certain percentage of the floor area must be devoted to fresh fruit and vegetable. And the origin of the program was a study that looked at neighborhoods throughout the city where either you had food deserts or you had high incidence of like obesity and hypertension, which is often tied to too much salt and too much sugar and too much canned food. So the whole idea was to have, healthier shopping options in neighborhoods so that you're not just getting canned and boxed stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that was just my 2 cents. I also want to know when is the project start date and the project end date.
Well, if it was up to the developer, the start date would be tomorrow.
But realistically,
Bobby, do you want to state your name and share?
Hi, my name is Bobby Chen. Nice to meet everyone. Thank you for the time to present today. Yes, we are preparing to start the demolition very shortly as soon as DOB issues our permit, which we are expecting within the next week or two. And then we're planning to move right into foundations in the first quarter of 2022 and expect to deliver a completed project sometime in 2024.
And you mentioned that 30% of the project is going to be for, affordable housing. When is that going to be available to the public? And is it going to be during the project building, or is it going to be after?
We'll be delivering the units that are affordable at the same time as the units that are market rate. I mean, it just has to go through the process with HPD and the administer of those units.
All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate that.
Tanya?
Yeah, I actually just had the same question that Joel had, which was who was the grocer. I just wanted to know specifically who that person is.
Yeah.
Because I also believe that's important.
Yeah, I need my wild arugula.
I just want.
I mean, just to answer the question and just to alleviate some of your concerns, it's not a big box retailer, right? It's a small business owner. They have, I've been to one of their locations in Brooklyn, and they have a couple of other locations scattered throughout the outer boroughs. And then they also have partnerships with other smaller supermarkets. Some of them have licenses with, brand name supermarkets, but they also brand their own. It's there to deliver fresh produce, goods for the neighborhood. They're the neighborhoods that they're in are generally residential neighborhoods that need supermarkets.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I don't know, I don't know if we can consider a person who owns like multiple grocers to be a small business owner, but I guess if I wouldn't characterize that as a small business owner. Just saying.
Understood.
I agree. I agree. I agree.
Yeah. Although I don't know if it's that unusual for the supermarket owners to own, more than one, but that's the business development committee. I'll pass that question on to them. Jim.
Thank you. I just want to, I'm basically going to give Steve's speech from a different point of view. Fort Tryon Park, as Steve pointed out, is an absolute gem of the New York City park system and of this neighborhood. And to have a 19-story building, which will probably tower over the mountain that the park is on, basically it's just right across the street from the park. It's an eyesore, or will be an eyesore, I wouldn't doubt, but it gets worse, of course. We, from the Land Use Committee, heard the words of terror. As of right, that means we had no say in the matter, so that's another terrible thing. I agree with Steve's concern, the 15,000 or whatever square feet that is going into, and I'm thrilled that we're getting a fresh supermarket. Don't misunderstand that. But those 15,000 street will become apartments. And because this is height factor zoning and there are no height limits, if you make a narrow, skinny building, certainly not like those monsters downtown, but something analogous to it, that's how you can get so high. And I mean, if you want to be really ridiculous, you could make one apartment building that goes, 40 feet tall, be impractical, but that's the whole, problem with height factor zoning. And here it is biting us, where. So I'm very concerned. And the only thing I can think of, and because again, this park is such a renowned gem, it has the cloisters in it, is that it would be helpful if you worked with the community and the Parks Department and maybe even representatives of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And I understand, this is your building and you can build it as of right, to at least color the building in a manner. So, I mean, like a bright purple building, I don't know what would happen. You probably have riots in front of your doorstep every day. So maybe that would mitigate some of the visual and presumably negative visual impact of the building, maybe angling the building this way or that way. Again, and in some sense, I'm appealing to you because as of right means you can pretty much build anything that fits within the zoning requirements, and the Department of Buildings won't fall down. But you can be a good neighbor. We would like you to be a good neighbor. And insofar as you build this tall building, you might be able to build it so it is, less of an eyesore and more of an amenity. That is my hope.
Yeah, I mean, let's not take the term as of right in the wrong direction. As of right simply means, as we know who've been on the committee forever, it would seem, that they're building within what is legally permitted pursuant to zoning. But that doesn't mean you can't be creative from the architectural design perspective. That doesn't mean you don't pay attention to where your site sits and what's around it, and be sensitive to and react to that. So although you've come to us to present the fresh supermarket certification, I think to some extent that is the easiest part of the project, the least, controversial. Not that it's controversial per se. I would say that, the residential component is important because there's a tremendous demand for affordable housing. But, how affordability is defined, and often HPD gets it wrong, because, they're looking at affordability citywide as opposed to affordability, what makes sense in Upper Manhattan, where the AMI is maybe 52% of the citywide. We're looking at what's the apartment layout, what are the size of apartments. So there are a lot of things that are, important, and the supermarket, which is great, requires less discussion. The site itself, and I don't know who the architect is for this, but if you're sitting across the street from, a building that is historic and one of the few, scenic, landmarks or, scenic designations in the area, I think you'd want to consider, whether it's required or not, how your building relates to, the park and the historic building that's sitting on the top of, that hill. It's not like, well, nothing around me exists. So it would be great to see, what we're talking about. I mean, beyond the application for the supermarket, what is the proposed design? And is there anything that shows how you are thinking about it in relation to its urban context, particularly in relationship to the park and the cloisters? So I think that is really the challenge that you need to look at.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. And I'd have to say that working with Frank and Jason, I think they're really thoughtful architects. And I do apologize that we do not have a rendering at the moment, but I'm wondering if either one of you could just take a moment and just kind of just talk to us a little bit about some of your thought process to address some of these issues, because I'm sure that you have thought about this.
Yeah, hi, I'm Frank Fusaro. I'm a partner at Handel Architects. We're the architects for
What's the name of the firm again?
Here. Handel Architects, Handel. We've been around and practicing here in New York City since 1994. The first buildings that the firm did were right around Lincoln Center area, the Sony Theater building, and the subsequent buildings that came after that for a group named Millennium Partners. Excuse me, I have a terrible head cold. My apologies. Not COVID, just head cold.
I'm sorry, what's your last name? Because there's a different name on the
Fusaro.
screen.
Yeah, I know. We're both logged in as Jason Evaliotis. Jason is also here with me from Handel. We were sent the same link, but Jason is the project architect in the office. Okay. Working on the
Can you
project.
just spell your last name, please? I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
My last name?
Yes.
F-U-S as in Sam, A-R-O.
Thank you.
Yeah, so in thinking about the building and what we're proposing, we have a base which is about 60 feet high. We're considering making it out of masonry. It sort of ties into the height of the buildings directly adjacent to us. And Vivian talked to you about this a little bit. The uses on the ground are the grocer, an entry for the school, and also an entry for the apartments on Broadway. The school and the grocer enter off of Sherman. There's also a parking entrance off of Broadway. There's a parking requirement here of approximately just over 100 cars, about 111 cars. And so the building, the masonry base includes the community facility, which is the medical office, and then the school, and then the residential building sits on top of this base, set back significantly from both Broadway and Sherman. There's a 15-foot mandated setback at the base height. And the building up above actually sits back. I'm just looking at a drawing quickly, almost almost over 35 feet along Broadway. And it ranges from 25 feet to 85 feet back, roughly measured from Sherman. So it sits sort of back on the site, away, sort of furthest away from the park and closer to the middle of the 47,000 square foot lot. And the building, the residential building, is also being contemplated as masonry. And we've been looking at colors that, you know, come from the park: schist, Manhattan schist, some of the base, some of the sort of tan colors of stone, and some darker colors of metal for windows in the building.
Thank you, Frank.
Jim? Or is your hand up from before, Jim?
No, it's up again. There currently is a public parking garage in that building. I think that's the only thing that's still working in that building that accommodates a lot of cars. And I would expect, because you're speaking only of the required parking for the building as you're building it, the new building would not accommodate as many cars, and that would put, you know, more of a strain on the street parking, and we even get fisticuffs around here with street parking. So I just wanted to ask about the parking.
Sure. The building is actually vacant and is not currently being used for public parking. So they wouldn't be displaced.
That's good to hear. It also means that the current capacity on the street is not, you know, well, very good. Thank you very much.
And Tanya, is your hand up again, or is that from before?
No, that's again. I just want to follow up with Jim's question about the parking. So will people have access? Will this be an open parking lot, parking for where the community can use it? Will just be for building residents
It's for the residents.
only?
Yes.
Okay.
Steve?
Well, I would just say that I don't know, it may be sort of disingenuous to say that that nobody was displaced. I mean, the garage was closed because of this project. You know, maybe it's been closed now for a year or more, but it was shut down because of this project. So a number of cars are now out on the street that would otherwise be in the building because of this project. But, you know, so let's just be factual on that point.
Yep, that's fair enough. I did not mean to be disingenuous by any stretch of the imagination.
Okay.
I think what I really meant was that it's not it's something that took place. I believe you said about a year ago.
It could even be longer than that.
Yeah, the reality is what Steve is saying is true, but the reality is, you know, every time you're building a new building on the site of a building, of an existing building, there's some period of time where the building is vacated. So at the point in time when you're tearing it down, obviously, you know, you're not displacing anyone because it's vacant. At some point in the past, obviously it was occupied. So, you know, we all understand that.
Yeah,
you know, we are pushing, we're actually just after 9 o'clock and we have another presentation. It strikes me that we need to see some of the documentation that we are talking about. So if the application was sent to the community board for the supermarket, I think myself and the committee need to take a look at that. But I think what would also be useful is if you can send whatever materials you have on the building that we're talking about, because we're talking about, you know, in the abstract, you know, 19,000, you know, 15 or 16,000 square feet of space in a much larger building. And we're trying to get a sense of how it all, you know, fits together. And additionally, you probably want to reach out to the office first thing in the morning to see about the availability of speaking to the Housing and Human Services Committee about this, because I said, you know, if your 421A vesting is driving the critical path, then you really need to be talking to them to get, you know, their comments. So, I mean, at this juncture, there is, you know, a lot to digest. And I would think the application for the supermarket is the easiest thing, but there's a lot more that we need to understand. And the sooner you can get us more information, the better.
Sure, I'm happy to resend the draft application. And we are going to, as soon as we get the written comments from city planning, I think we've already started, just based on the conversation, started working on updating drawings, but we're looking to turn that around very quickly so that we can get the actual filed application to you right away. And we'll be able to provide some supplemental information in addition to the filed application to help you get a bigger picture of.
Right. But I would think whatever, you know, architectural information that is available now that describes in plans and elevations what the building looks like and the setbacks you were talking about, you know, providing that would give, you know, this committee and the Housing and Human Services Committee an idea of, you know, what in the world we're talking about.
Yep, absolutely.
So Joel, to you, but then we're going to move on to EDC.
In addition, Wayne, I would love to know, probably as part of the resolution, how was the business owner chosen and how what's his plans, just to get more detail from his side, and like just the process of how that particular business owner was chosen, just for the board to know. Yeah.
I would say when it's, you know, when it is okay to talk about it, it would be great to know more about the kind of operations the proposed operator has, and, you know, what's their understanding of, you know, the market in the area where the site's located and how they will, you know, cater to that market. So, you know, thank you, and I look forward to getting more information you know, ASAP.
Absolutely, and thank you very much for allowing us to present to you.
You're very welcome. And with that, we have
Thank you.
an
thank you.
update from, I think, EDC and partners on the, I guess, the Inwood rezoning commitments. And who is taking us through that? Katie, are you speaking? Can't hear you.
Does this work? Hello?
Yes, yes.
Great. Sorry about that. Hi, my name is Katie Chen. I'm a project manager with EDC's Neighborhood Strategies Group, and I'm joined by my colleagues at EDC as well as at DCP, DOT, and Parks. Before we get started, I think I'll hand it off to my colleagues for a quick round of introductions since there are a number of us on the call. Jocelyn, are you on?
You mean Jocelyn Dupree?
Yes.
I see her name there. And she's unmuted, but I don't hear her.
No worries. I will then pass it to Fernando Ortiz.
Hello, everyone. My name is Fernando Ortiz. This is my first week at EDC. I am the new Upper Manhattan and Bronx Borough Director for Government and Community Relations. So very much looking forward to working with the Inwood community, Washington Heights, all of Upper Manhattan. Families from the Dominican Republic. So I very much connect and know the neighborhood, and I'm very happy to be here.
And now I see Jocelyn.
Yeah, sorry. No, right when I went to talk, somehow it kicked me out of the meeting. Jocelyn Dupre, Vice President with our Neighborhood Strategies Group at EDC.
Chelsea?
Yep. Hello, everyone. My name is Chelsea. I recently also joined Neighborhood Strategies working on the Inwood team. Thank you for having us tonight.
And I think DOT is on.
Hi, good evening. My name is John Matera. I'm the Senior Planner in the Manhattan Borough Commissioner's Office.
Parks.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Ernish. I'm with the Parks Department Planning Division, and I have the added bonus of getting to work with Steve Simon all the time.
Finally, I think we have DCP.
Yes, hi, sorry all. Annie White from DCP still here. Had to go off camera.
No worries. Thanks, everyone. I believe Chelsea will be sharing her screen with our presentation tonight. But as Wayne mentioned, we are here to share an update on the Inwood points of agreement commitments that came out of the Inwood NYC planning initiative. So,
can everyone see the screen just to make sure?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Next slide. Thanks. So as a reminder, the Inwood Points of Agreement, or POA, is a number of commitments that the city made coming out of the Inwood NYC planning initiatives. The POA has over $200 million in new funding for waterfront parks, projects, transportation, infrastructure, and more. It has 87 commitments that are being executed by over 15 agencies. And in addition to providing regular community updates through community board meetings and at request of other state groups, we also have to publish an annual progress report that is on the city's rezoning commitments tracker website. So if you ever have any questions on our progress, you can reach out to us, but also check out our website. So diving into our agenda updates, I'll actually pass it off to Elizabeth to share the parks updates.
Slide, thanks. So Monsignor Cat Playground, this project will reconstruct Monsignor Cat Playground, including the court areas, the play areas, sports lighting, and a new comfort station. The project is currently in procurement. Provided the contract award process is successful, construction is expected to start by the end of 2021 or early 2022. The next project is the High Bridge water tower stabilization. This project is actually just on the tail end of reconstruction. We're down to the punch list items, and hopefully it will be completed by the end of 2021. Slide, please. Dyckman Rest, this is in the northern reach of High Bridge Park along Dyckman Avenue. This project will reconstruct Dyckman Rest with two play areas, one for tots and one for 5 to 12-year-olds, a spray fountain, seating areas, and a dog run. We're putting a lot of value into a pretty small space. It's currently in design, and that design is expected to complete in February 2022. The next project is Ann Loftus Playground, which is in Fort Tryon Park. I know we had a lot of discussion about that park earlier this evening. This project is reconstructing the spray shower plaza, the children's climbing play area, and safety surfacing, and it's currently in construction. It started this past August. The next project, the very tip of Inwood Hill, soccer field number 1, also known as the Dyckman Fields. We are renovating this field and converting the synthetic turf to we are converting the natural lawn to a synthetic turf to accommodate year-round use. It's currently in design, and we expect to complete design in spring 2022. And then I think we're going to hand it back to EDC for some waterfront updates, but then I think I'm coming back for the Dyckman Street item.
Thanks, Elizabeth. For the Harlem River waterfront infrastructure, this is the reconstruction and restoration of multiple waterfront structures from south of Dyckman Street to west 155th Street. So the team had started design in fall 2020, and the final design is anticipated to be complete by mid-2022. And they're planning to start construction for early 2023.
Park project, the Dyckman Street Pier improvements. These improvements include a fishing pier, canoe pier reconstruction, floating docks for larger vessels, and improved community access at Dyckman Street and shoreline repairs. And very excited to announce that we'll be starting design by the end of this year, end of 2021. So I think that's it for park projects.
Thank you. For the waterfront parks on the other side of Inwood, we have the Academy Street and North Cove waterfront open spaces. So Academy Street will be a new 2-acre waterfront park that will be active and have recreational amenities. The North Cove Park will be an ecological resource that will restore the area and reclaim the property for public use. So after a pause because of COVID, we're excited to say that we've kicked off the design process, and with the design team that we selected in 2019 called Quinnell Rothschilds and Partners. The work we will begin this fall will be some initial site investigations, and we also look forward to working with the community closely as we begin this design process and to design the 2 waterfront open spaces. We're also excited to talk about the fact that the city received $723 million to allocated for the Manhattan Waterfront Greenway, with a significant portion of that funding going to Inwood. So this will build on the Academy Street and North Cove waterfront open spaces and really fulfill the vision that the community outlined in the Sherman Creek Waterfront Master Plan, which we know that a lot of members here have worked on. And so we're really excited to bring that forward.
When is it anticipated these 2 parks will actually be finished?
We don't have the construction timeline yet, but we're anticipating to start the design very soon. I will follow up with the construction timeline.
Yeah, we're just getting this team on board. So we're really looking forward to kicking off and having a lot more detail to share with you soon.
Jocelyn. Moving on to housing updates, I will be presenting these updates on the behalf of HPD because they unfortunately were unable to join us tonight. But if you have any specific questions about any of the housing updates, we will definitely note them down and pass them off to HPD and get back to you as quickly as possible. You're already aware of the Inwood Library groundbreaking, so I won't spend too much time on this slide, but saying that we are very happy and excited to see the project moving forward. Next slide, we have the North Cove Affordable Housing Development at 207th Street and 9th Avenue. This is a private site that Mad Equities will be developing to create over 600 new affordable units in the neighborhood, as well as a new waterfront esplanade. So the city has been continuing to work with the development team to finalize and approve their street and open space designs. And we're anticipating that the closing for the first phase of the project will be in 2022 at the earliest. For Charter, which is at 4095 9th Avenue. This is a project where EDC is reconfiguring these 2 irregularly shaped lots so that we can create a new city lot for us to RFP out for affordable housing. And this will create approximately 570 new units. We are continuing to advance the land swap transaction, and we're expected to have the RFP release for 2022 at the earliest.
So I just want to point out that when we were discussing the ELIZA earlier this year, the HPD team came to us indicating they were looking for, community board and community input. But when we gave that input, it was basically, well, it's a fait accompli. The design is finished. And we're going to be breaking ground closing in the next couple of weeks. So there's really nothing that can be done. And there were commitments made that moving forward, there would be much better and much earlier coordination with the community board concerning things like, unit distribution and unit size. I don't think there was too much concern with the Eliza in terms of the affordability. It seemed to, hit that right. But there was a lot of discussion of, the allocation and the size and the layout. And, when everything is done and it's just being presented, but it's being presented under the guise of getting community input, that feels less than genuine. So all of these projects that are moving forward, we're not expecting that they're going to come to us when you're 3 weeks away from closing with JP Morgan Chase and there's nothing that can be done.
Yeah, definitely. And I hear you, and that we will pass that feedback along to HPD and make sure that the outreach process is early on in the planning for these projects and not later on and when they're close to finalizing design.
Yeah, Steve, I see your hand up. Is it regarding this point?
This particular slide, I can't quite figure out where we are. Is the bottom street, is that 207th Street?
No, so this is actually further up in Inwood, closer to the northern tip of Manhattan. It's right below the New York Presbyterian site. Sorry, I am.
So what is the southern street?
214.
Yeah.
214.
Or is that 218? Yeah, it's 218, 219, and 220.
Okay. So these are two lots that are being developed for housing.
So the city is reconfiguring the irregularly shaped lots, as you see on the left image. So that's what it is now, but we are going to basically rejigger the boundaries so that we have a new northern city lot that has a street front access, and that will be the lot that will be for affordable housing. Charter Communications, also known as Spectrum, they own the lot that is in yellow, so they will be getting the southern lot.
All right. So and so are they developing the southern lot for housing as well?
They are not. I believe that they are using it for their operations.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right. So this is currently a parking lot, I believe, right?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay. All right. I know where we are. Okay. Could I also ask a question about the previous slide about Academy Street in North Cove? Oh, no, the one. Yeah, this one. Yeah. No, not this one. I'm sorry. This one. Yeah. First of all, I want to make a point. When you talk about Academy Street, what makes this so significant is that street has been closed to the public for decades. And so we're not just constructing a new park, we're providing access to the waterfront that the public has not been able to have for an extremely long time. Con Edison closed off that street and has denied public access for quite a while. So this is this to me is one of the most significant things that you're doing. But can I just ask, as you begin the design process for these two parks, is the intention to hold what we in the Parks Department call a scope meeting or a community input meeting to solicit public input?
Yes, definitely. And we plan to coordinate closely with parks to organize those meetings and make sure that community input is at each step of the process.
Very good. Thank you.
Great. I believe, yes. Thank you. So moving on to school capital projects, I will also be presenting these on the behalf of FCA and DOE. We made a number of commitments to improve the schools and programming for youth in Inwood.
Take your hand down.
The first commitment through that is the STEM Center at Gregorio Luperone High School, which will create a new state-of-the-art STEM center for the school. The design is currently underway and it's expected to be completed by the end of this year. Moving on to the George Washington Educational Campus, we have a number of capital investments there, including replacing windows in the school as well as refurbishing two pools, I'm sorry. The construction is underway for the window replacement project, and it's approximately 65% complete. As for the two pools, they are currently in design and targeting to bid and award for construction in the fall. We also have the STEM education and after-school programming at GWEC, which is to upgrade the space and equipment to accommodate increased STEM education. SCA and DOE are continuing to work with all the principals in the building to continue to refine the project. Moving on to arts and culture, we have the Immigrant Research and Performing Arts Center, which we call IRPAC for short. This future facility will be dedicated cultural and immigrant research space for artists and cultural groups in Northern Manhattan and Inwood. We released an RFEI in 2019 to identify a cultural nonprofit to operate this future facility. We restarted the selection process earlier this year after a COVID pause, and we're currently going through that process and have been moving forward in discussions with the respondents. So unfortunately, we are still in an open procurement, so I can't say too much about how that is going, but we are advancing discussions.
But is there a site for this center?
So we don't have a site yet. And initially in the RFEI, we allow for respondents to propose a site. And we did this because, as you all may know, the city, we don't own a lot of sites up in Inwood. So we wanted to open an opportunity for the respondents to propose a site along with their responses. And we understand that we don't want to force an operator or cultural group into a space that they don't like. So our intention is to work very closely with the selected operator to find a site.
Right, but I think it's also important. One of the things that has been stated time and time again is the lack of and the desire for more performing cultural art spaces in Washington Heights and Inwood. Mm-hmm. And I think there are some who feel that Washington Heights may have some. We talked earlier about the Audubon Terrace, which has the auditorium space for the Academy of Arts and Letters, and you've got the United Palace and some others, but that locations in Inwood are more lacking. So while it's okay to have respondents propose, I think we also need to be mindful of what the community has said time and time again, where they're looking for facilities to be located and where they're needed.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. And our intention from the beginning is to locate the facility in Inwood. So that is definitely top of mind for us.
Joel, your hand is up for this.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. So you mentioned that there's respondents. Is it closed or is it still currently open? And if it's still open, how do members of the community still apply? Can they still apply?
So the RFEI was released in 2019, and the responses were due in December.
I'm sorry. What's that? I'm sorry. What's that acronym you're using?
Oh, sorry. It is a request for expressions of interest. So it's the city put this out to call for proposals from members of the public, cultural groups that want to apply to be an operator for this cultural facility.
And how do you submit an application? Like, do members submit an application?
So in the RFEI, we released it in partnership with DCLA and EDC. So we had advertised the RFEI, and the way respondents submitted was to email EDC and DCLA through our project email their proposals, and also submit it in person to us. And we review it and then kick off the selection process.
So it was previously released in 2019. It was out for a few months. We received responses. We were then delayed due to COVID. There was a second round to understand groups' abilities to continue to make good on their proposals that they had submitted in a poster, I guess still during COVID world. And we are now in the process of negotiating with potential operators as a part of the selection process.
So put simply, the application process is closed and you are evaluating the applications that have been received
At this time, yeah.
at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
If there are no more questions on ERPAC, I'll move on to infrastructure improvement. So the first project under this category are bringing broadband improvements to Inwood. In the POA, we had said that we would use the city's franchise and contracting authority to bring broadband to Inwood. As we went through that process, we realized that the franchise agreement is not the most effective and efficient way to bring broadband to Inwood. So we've instead pivoted to an RFP, which is a request for proposals, to invite telecommunications industries to submit proposals to create new affordable broadband access to neighborhoods in New York and throughout New York City. This is a partnership between the Mayor's Office of the Chief Technology Officer, the Department of Small Business Services, and EDC. And this RFP will bring $157 million in capital investments to broadband service options throughout the city. We're currently in the active procurement process and the city is reviewing proposals. So I can't say too much about how the geographies are shaping out, but I can say that Inwood was included as a priority neighborhood in the RFP. So respondents were encouraged to include Inwood as a part of their response. So we are hoping to be able to share more about the selection process and the geographies for broadband early next year. Moving on to DEP's water main and sanitary sewer replacement project. This project is under construction and is expected to be completed by the end of this year.
Excuse me, I think it was finished several months ago.
They completed work. They've been completing work in specific areas, piece by piece. I know they completed work in the Park Terrace area and is now moving on to, I believe it was around West 119th Street in Amsterdam. So you might see one section of their improvements that they completed.
Yeah, they're now working in Washington Heights in the 180s or so.
I'm just curious how these water main and sanitary sewer replacement, how those projects are moving forward with projects like this have been informed by the experience with Henri and Ida.
That is a good question. I will note that down to ask DEP and ask them to share a response with you.
Right, because I believe it was mentioned that Ida delivered rain that was, I think, at 200% capacity of the sewer design. And if that's going to happen more frequently, the question is, when we're doing sewer replacement, what is the standard of design that is appropriate?
Yeah, my committee is looking into that, Wayne.
Okay. Natalie?
Oh, Wayne, I had a question too, so.
Okay, so.
Don, you can go first. You're on the committee.
Tanya?
Yeah, so last time you all were here, I'd asked about the broadband issue, the broadband improvements. I just wanted to, first of all, can you explain a little bit more about what you mean? Like, what are you trying to improve? What is your focus in terms of these improvements? My concern before had been about equal, having more choices in terms of access to broadband, and how can we ensure that? As I had mentioned, some of the, at least where I'm at, but I'm in Washington Heights, but there's a monopoly with Spectrum and so I just wanted to, that was a question I had before, and I wasn't sure if you all had a chance to, get some information about that, but I would like to first, again, know more about what type of improvements you're making specifically. And in terms of the providers, what are we looking at in terms of variety, in terms of choice? Because I think that's really important, because I'm limited where I'm at to only Spectrum because of the deals they cut with the buildings. And so, they don't give us an option.
Yes, definitely. I will answer your questions to the best of my ability, but I think some of them might be more suited for our broadband team. So we're also happy to invite them for a presentation or to connect you with them afterwards if you have more questions. But to your first question about broadband improvements, that's really to bring upgrade the infrastructure to make broadband service in Inwood and Northern Manhattan and other neighborhoods throughout New York more accessible and affordable. My understanding is that because of limited infrastructure, especially with companies like Spectrum having a monopoly over it, that is the reason why broadband options are very limited, and why you're seeing that you have landlords cutting deals with Spectrum. So we're hoping that by improving the infrastructure, we can also bring more accessible options, affordable options to New Yorkers. I don't know if that answers your question, Tanya, but
it does. It's just a big problem, and I just don't want to see it happen in Inwood when this happens where I'm at, with this opportunity to do something different. With Spectrum, basically blocking the Fios and anybody else. So I just wanted to see, how this new system, you said that you're doing the RFP, how that's going to be, a different, a better option in terms of making sure that there are, I know this is about infrastructure, but I'm just saying, I want to make sure that whatever you do, that there is choice. And how do we ensure that there is choice? That people will have options so that they can make themselves the most affordable option for themselves.
Yeah.
And not the companies themselves, taking over and forcing a price on people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, understood. I will pass that question to our broadband team and ask them to share a response with you.
Yeah, that would be good, because I had asked about it before, and I was hoping that you all would have more detail tonight, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think essentially the response that we got is that it's really up to the building owners. I'm not sure that we have, as the city, an ability to impact that. I think that we can go back and double check, but I'm pretty sure that is the answer to your question.
Yeah, and that's a problem, obviously, because if it's up to building owners, they're shady, and they're going to do what and they probably get money for it. So,
Right,
and I know my building
the
is.
city doesn't control what the building owners do. So the question is, what can the city do to incentivize property owners to, to allow others in there?
True. Yes. Thank you.
Well, definitely ask that question.
I mean, we're going through that now in my building where, we have Spectrum. Verizon has made a proposal, although they're slow as molasses in the wintertime, but it's at no cost to us. So that's one of the incentives. It's the installation is completely on their dime. And if they get no subscribers, that's completely on their dime. So, I mean, if I'm a property owner and you're telling me that I have to pay for it, it's one thing. If you're telling me all I have to do is allow you to put in your installation and you will pay for it, and if you don't get any of my tenants to subscribe, you eat the cost, that's another argument. So it depends on how it's presented.
True.
Natalie?
Hi, Wayne, thank you. And I'll be brief because I can see a lot of questions popping up in the Q&A.
I can't see the Q&A.
Okay, I'm letting you know, that I don't know if they can raise their hands, the attendees. So someone will have to help you out
Yeah.
with that. But I think some people do want to ask questions. My question was about, and I will switch hats here to my cultural policy analyst hat, on the performing arts space. I can't use that acronym. It sounds so ugly. It sounds like a bodily function. It, you know, in the same way that people are asking, are you adapting to the lessons learned from the hurricanes with these infrastructure changes? Are we rethinking how a performance venue space is going to be imagined in a post-COVID world, given the fact that the arts and culture, the creative sector, is still, you know, first to open, first to close, last to reopen, reopening at, you know, with huge limitations and huge challenges. Are there any adjustments being made? And by adjustments, you know, I mean more money, so that some of these spaces could handle the additional expenses to have social distancing and enforce vaccine mandates for attendees, or whatever that future looks like for a performing arts venue. And I think it's prudent at this point for anybody to think we could have another outbreak of things and we need to take these precautions. Are we thinking of upgraded HVAC that we weren't thinking about when the RFI went out in 2019? Are we thinking of flexible seating as opposed to fixed seating, so that the space can be adapted if there is a public health crisis? And I don't expect answers to all of this now, but I'm just kind of trying to get a sense of, are there these conversations happening with DCLA and cultural leaders about how any project planned before COVID has to really adapt for a new reality?
Yes. Short answer is yes. I think that, you know, I want to be very careful about how much I share here, because as Katie mentioned, you know, we're in the middle of an open procurement, but I'll say that it was part of the intention of going back to each of the respondents and making sure that we essentially received updated proposals, understanding how organizations are adapting in a world with COVID and potential future public health crises. And, you know, ultimately it will be up to the operator of the space to put in place all of these, you know, specific operational moves. But I think, you know, generally, we wanted to understand how organizations are adapting today to COVID in their current spaces and their current operations, and then how they would plan to in the future. To your question about funding, we have not considered additional funding. But I think that, you know, there are of course opportunities for whoever the operator is to raise additional funds for their projects as well.
Opportunities where specifically?
I mean, all of it. I don't want to share too much again because it's an open selection, but just speaking generally of nonprofit organizations, right? Like they have multiple funding sources. This funding is specifically to construct new space for this cultural facility, but it is not necessarily or likely the only funding source that an organization would have to continue their operations into the future.
No, it is not the only funding source, and I'm just putting out there that these you know, organizations that potentially could have been applicants in whatever way, shape, or form and under consideration, any one of them would have been organizations that were, you know, probably treading water long before COVID, because that's how most of the, you know, nonprofit or community-based art works. And even if, you know, whatever that looks like, even larger venues, it's not like a lot of the relief money was readily available to them. And, you know, given also the disproportionate impact of COVID in every way across the board in communities of color, it had that same disproportionate impact on BIPOC-led arts and cultural organizations that we would presumably think are interested in being applicants for this, and we would be interested in having them. And so I think that there's the potential to kind of look for ways to bolster that original scope and not just say, well, you guys go find stuff, because going out and finding stuff right now is extremely difficult because a lot of funding sources did dry up, or they are based on revenue losses that apply more to commercial theater and not to community-based venues. So just food for thought there.
Point taken. Thank you.
Joel, is your hand up from before, or is that a new hand?
That's from before. Sorry, guys.
Okay, not a problem. And I mean, some of the Q&A questions, I mean, we've sort of hit on where is the, like where is the center to be located, and Inwood, there was a discussion of the other project and its configuration. As we've discussed, we need to see, and we have asked for plans so we can see what we're talking about. I think a lot of what's in the Q&A we have touched upon as we've had our conversations.
Great, thank you. If there are no other questions for the previous slides, I will pass it off to John to share the transportation updates.
Hi, everybody. So for those of you who are in Inwood, you know that the Broadway Bridge is under construction. We're closing lanes, doing work, replacing steel, electrical hardware. Everything's going along well, and our community liaison hasn't reported any issues. But I guess if anyone has issues, you could let me know and I'll pass them along to her. The project, I honestly can't remember, Tanya, when the last time I did present to you was, but the project to do transit signal prioritization on the BX12 has happened, and it's complete and it's in effect. So little tiny radio computers inside the buses are telling similar radio computers inside the signals that a bus is coming. And if it's about to turn red, the light will stay green a little bit longer to try to keep the bus flow, out of Inwood and into the Bronx going smoothly. And it runs all the way to Palm Bay Park. Okay, so the POA included basically turning some of our safety improvement projects from, I think, as far back as 2007 into capital projects. These are our current completion dates. These two initiatives were originally two different SIPs, but they're actually only one capital project. And we just, within the last month or so, transmitted our package of design requests to the Department of Design and Construction. Just today, Deputy Commissioner from Design and Construction emailed me asking for some background information. Their team is going there tomorrow, and that's the beginning of their design process, which usually lasts a year. And then there's procurement, which could also last a year, and then it would be in construction for a couple of years. So you're several years off from seeing this in the ground, but things are moving along well. And then one other thing, someone from EDC mentioned the $700 and something million of Greenway money. So the POA project is being slightly amended so that any place, usually the POA is an intersection, but if the Greenway would have crossed through that intersection, they modified the POA project to take away the Greenway aspect so that the underlying safety project for pedestrians and vehicles can proceed with the DDC contract. And the part of it that would have been bicycle scope will travel with the Greenway project, which has a longer timeline. I think the next slide. Oh, that's it.
I have a quick question for the team, because I see this pop up at each update. The points of agreement, as we've noted, half a dozen times or so, were reduced to writing by the mayor's office several years ago. So they've been set for some time. So when you're presenting your updates, you're presenting, what was agreed to back then. And so if there's a allocation of sites between Washington Heights and Inwood, that's what the mayor's office agreed to at the time. If someone wants to know how come X site in Inwood or X site or X project in Inwood isn't being, advanced, or what is required to have that project considered, how should they approach getting that site or that project moving?
Can you clarify, isn't being considered for
whatever? I mean, if we're talking about, for example, park improvements, and if we're looking at parks that are in, Washington Heights, or if we're looking at, DOT, if someone is saying, well, the rezoning is in Inwood, and there's a split between improvements that are happening in Washington Heights and things that are happening in Inwood, what can we do to get another site or another park improved in Inwood? What can we do to get another intersection? If someone wants to see, more attention given to something in Inwood, how do they approach that? Because simply pointing out that, well, this school is not in Inwood, it's in Washington Heights, doesn't do anything from month to month, because as I said, the mayor's office outlined the points of agreement years ago. And if someone wanted, another park or another school or another intersection, it would have been prudent to say something at that time to the mayor's office or to the councilman to include that. But, given what we have now, if someone wants to see, another park improvement somewhere in Inwood, if they want to see improvements of, more, sewer infrastructure, how would they go about addressing concerns of that nature?
It would really be with the city agency that's responsible for any of those individual things, or of course your local council member or other elected officials. Obviously, can be your advocate within the city government as well. I think that, these forums where we come to present on the POAs often bring together multiple city agencies. So it can also obviously be, a good forum to raise it. Well, you have many of the agencies here.
And that was going to be my question. Could they use the forum to say more specifically, can you consider, or I'd like you to look at X, and have follow-up from the appropriate agency or, group of agencies require that on that discussion?
I mean, speaking for DOT, I realize it's an amazingly drawn out process, but the capital projects that we're doing, excuse me, I have a cold.
Welcome to the club.
The capital projects that we're doing with the POA funding were envisioned in around 2006, 2007 as just paint in the street. The ones that worked, we put in the capital plan when the Inwood rezoning started. And now we're glad to have the capital money for it. I do know that in the time since the rezoning started and we began scoping, and also because we were able to subtract the bicycle stuff away from the POA money because we got the other bicycle money, we actually are going to be touching more corners and places and adding safety improvements that, if we had to show you the list from 3 or 4 years ago when we started, wouldn't have as many spots as we intuited would be needed. the way public review works for capital projects is the next time you'll see it is after there's a design from DVC, but we at least have added scope.
Steve, is that an old hand or a new hand?
No, I grew a new hand.
Okay. Well, you're unique.
Yeah. Let me just say that as I'm really here as a member of Community Board 12 and as the chair of the Health and Environment Committee. And there are, I don't know, 8 or so commitments that relate directly to health and environment, which did not get covered in the presentation. So I assume that there's information about all of them on the tracker. But I have a particular interest tonight in number 17, which discusses additional potential opportunities for affordable housing on public land, and specifically refers to relocating the District 8 sanitation garage from 215th Street down to East 25th, 26th Streets. Would you know whether or not that particular District 8 garage is in progress, where that particular project stands?
That's an excellent question. I don't know off the top of my head where that project stands. It was paused a number of different times. It is relying upon other land use actions in another district to be able to advance.
Right.
That as far as I and have not advanced forward at this time.
So it's not this, that relocation is not progressing right now?
That is my understanding.
Oh, well,
Steve, is that the garage that actually serves the a neighborhood downtown, but parks their vehicles up here?
yes, exactly. Yeah, it's a big priority of ours to see them comply with co-terminality and move down to the east side. It's
Yeah, we've discussed that over the years. I mean, it doesn't serve this community, but still, you know, the space it occupies is in this community. And, you know, I know that we were joking with one of our community board members who happens to work for an institution up here, but live down there, that, you know, they need to take care of their garbage in their neighborhood.
And what we need to point out is that as part of the POA, is that has been identified as a potential site for affordable housing. So that's yet another reason why we should encourage the construction of this garage downtown.
Absolutely. We can check on the updates. I haven't seen any movement. I can say though, I was out on maternity leave the past few months, so I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. So we'll double check. But strongly encourage you to ask for that. And
But I would just point out though that it also falls under, you know, the umbrella of, you know, sort of environmental justice, because, you know, if you look at the, you know, the wastewater plant on the Hudson River side that basically serves the development, you know, from 72nd Street down, there's a history of, you know, facilities like that being put in or adjacent to communities of color. And, you know, this is a perfect example of, you know, the community that's served by this garage is the, you know, the Upper East Side. And so why are they, you know, lugging their vehicles all the way, you know, up to Inwood?
Well, you know, it was meant to be a temporary relocation, which has now gone on for
how many decades?
I don't know, but it's quite a few. And could I just mention that another key point of agreement that I'm very interested in is number 86, the development of the drainage plan for Inwood. But I'll get back in touch with DEP on that one.
Oh, we're actually working on that and advancing it. I think Katie can give the latest from our team.
Yeah, so the drainage plan was paused for a bit because of COVID, but the team is anticipating to start it up again by the end of this year.
Oh, that would be great. I would love to get a presentation about it at my at a future meeting of my committee.
Yeah, we will note that to the team.
All right. Well, it is after 10 o'clock and we still have some other business to attend to. But I would say that, you know, as we go through the next round or series of rounds of these updates, some of the things that we're touching upon now, you know, it'll be great if we, you know, don't just hear about, you know, the Eliza and the parks and stuff that, you know, we talk about all the time, but what are some of the other commitments and where are they and how are they advancing? Because there's interest in, you know, everything that was listed and clearly more. And the extent to which these forums can be used for people to, you know, begin to discuss how other initiatives can be advanced would be useful. I mean, if they can get pointed in, you know, the right direction, because sometimes just going to the agency having responsibility isn't as useful as going to them armed with more information.
And happy to work with you on the agendas for these meetings and, you know, what's best to update on every time. Obviously, with the hundreds of commitments, you know, we can't update on all of them each time, but happy to, you know, rotate them and make sure we speak to a range of different commitments and not just the same few every time.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you. Wayne, do we have a copy of the PowerPoint?
I don't know, but you can they can certainly send it to us and then we will.
Yes, we will circulate it to you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Is there any old business? Steve, is your hand up for old business?
This old person is getting tired.
Yeah. Is there any
That's
new
old
business? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Did we finish our budget priorities
We discussed budget priorities last month.
and finish it off?
Yes, there were only two, and we discussed that we wanted to continue to advance those.
Okay, very good.
Natalie?
I just wanted to quickly plug the Maggie Payton Gallery exhibition. For a long time, the walls were quite sad and empty at the Maggie Payton Gallery at the Manhattan Borough President's Office. But we have a wonderful exhibit showcasing Manhattan-based artists who produced works of art during or about COVID. And it is, we had our reception on Monday for the opening, but it will be on display through at least the end of November. So please do come by during office hours and take a look.
So you did not ask me to put up my photos of Havana. I'm insulted.
We put out a call for artists and we have 4 distinguished Uptown Community District 12 artists represented in the gallery.
I'm kidding. So this is in the municipal building. Are you doing anything on 125th Street?
At the moment, 125th Street, because it is a storefront with limited space, I don't think we can do any events there for the foreseeable end of this administration, just for safety reasons. Even the staff there is limited. But you know, you never know, people get creative, but we hope folks do come and take a look at the Welcome Back exhibit. And I was putting the link before into the Q&A and then you promoted me to panelist. So I'll just make sure that Ebenezer gets it and can share it with everybody.
Yeah, that'll be great. So we're on new business?
I believe I moved to adjourn since you asked for that.
Vivian, are you seconding? You're raising your hand, but you're muted. You're still muted.
That's a problem. I am seconding. I apologize.
Oh, okay. So it's moved in second to adjourn. It's 10:12. All in favor?
Aye.
In favor?
Aye.
Good night, all.
Good night.